This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by.
Assembly, and I've already made my first mistake by not switching on my microphone. I will no doubt make many more during my first meeting of chairing this Assembly. Let me get my apologies in now, because I won't do it during the meeting unless they're big mistakes that I make. Can I welcome everyone to this meeting, and can I begin with the formal statement? The London Assembly is the voice of London, composed of 25 members elected at the same time as the Mayor in order to hold him to account and scrutinise his policies. This is the Mayor's Question Time meeting of the Assembly, which means that all members are invited to attend and ask questions of the Mayor. Can I welcome members, officers and the public here in the gallery and those watching on the webcast from their offices or from their homes. In case of emergencies and we may need to exit the building, guests that are seated in the public gallery should follow security staff and Assembly members should follow the meeting clerk. Please may I remind you to silence your devices, and can I ask the Mayor and members to position their microphones so they can be heard clearly, moving it closer to you by picking it up from the base if required. Members are reminded that electronic devices should not be placed in front of microphones, which must be turned on to speak and turned off once finished. I've already reminded myself. Members may also be reminded to turn off any mobile hotspots for the duration of the meeting. Can I now ask the clerk, Rebecca Arnold, to confirm any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies today from the Chair, Assembly Member Boff.
Now, Assembly Member Boff is doing, is part of the UK delegation to the Council of Europe and representing the UK, so that's where he is. He's not on some holiday or other good things that sometimes Assembly members should be doing. He is doing a job of work. There are no remote attendees. I'm now going to move on just to highlight some of the work of recent Assembly activities. Given our role in scrutinising police and fire activities of London, I wanted to draw... Oh, sorry. I've got to get the first speech right. Firstly, on behalf of the London Assembly, I would like to offer a message in support and thanks to the growing Spanish and Portuguese speaking communities who help make London one of the most diverse cities in the world. During this year's Amigo Month, I would like to express my support for your celebrations over the next few weeks. I know this will be shared by both the Mayor and the 25 Assembly members. Since we last met, the Transport for London plenary, at the London plenary question and answer session, where we questioned the Mayor and the TfL Commissioner Andy Lord about the current TfL operations and future plans. Also, the Planning and Regeneration Committee held its second meeting in unlocking housing developments in London. The Fire Committee responded to the findings of Grenfell Phase 2 inquiry report, and the committee also questioned the London Fire Brigade and other guests about that report. And finally, the Police and Crime Committee held a question and answer session with the Deputy Mayor for Policing and the Crime and Metropolitan Police Service on public order policing and the recent ill assessment of the Met. It would be appropriate just to highlight some of those blue emergency services that are a part of the GLA family, the mayoral family, in terms of delivering services. And I just want to highlight some of the work that's been going on, and particularly around the Fire Brigade, around some of the part of their work going on in our communities across London. So at New Cross Fire Station, they're hosting a Restart a Heart training day on Saturday the 5th of October. It's an initiative to teach residents in Lewisham, New Cross, Southwark of how to access and use defibrillators. There's a tongue twister for the start of the meeting. On Tuesday the 13th of August, equally, one of the real challenges facing some Londoners is that the Fire Brigade provided a training service for delivery riders visiting Shoreditch Fire Station, whereas riders had the opportunity to speak to firefighters about the LFB's Charge Safe campaign. The campaign raises the awareness of how people can reduce the risk from fire from e-bikes and e-scooters. In 2024 alone, around 100 e-bike and scooter fires have been recorded. The campaign is a collaboration of LFB and Delivery and Amazon, and hopefully this will continue to highlight that maybe a new way of travelling around London, but also there are some real challenges facing those users of those bikes and some of the problems that can arise if they're not maintained properly. Now, in the future, we might actually also just include some issues around some good work that the police have been carrying out in prevention as well in the future. And I hope that the chair of the Assembly will also highlight one or two issues going on across London that actually are not just one or two issues. There's hundreds of those issues of where our blue light services are keeping London safer and trying to do their best in very challenging environments. Now, if we can return to the item 2 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Can I ask the Assembly to note the interests set out in item 2? Do Assembly members have any other disclosable pecuniary interests which relate to items on the agenda for today's meeting, or any other relevant interest, including any declarations in relation to gifts and hospitalities which are not reflected in the authority's registered gift and hospitalities? Thank you very much. Let's go on to item 3. Can I ask the Assembly to formally receive the Mayor's report covering the period of the 5th of July to the 29th of August 2024. The Mayor will now provide an oral update of up to 5 minutes in length on matters occurring since the publication of the report.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to the Assembly and to the Chair and to everyone else. Last week, the final report of the Grenfell Tower inquiry was published. After more than 7 long years, we've been confronted with the knowledge that every death, all the suffering, was avoidable. We now know that the tragic events of June the 14th, 2017, which will forever haunt our city, were fueled by the failure of successive governments and councils who violated their fundamental duty to keep their citizens safe, and a culture of corporate greed, indifference and dishonesty which saw profit prioritised over people. As Mayor, I want to address the bereaved, the survivors, the Grenfell community, those left in unsafe homes across our city, and everyone concerned with the dignity of human life. As a society, we have witnessed what happens when we apply an excess of greed and a deficit of care to the places people call home. We cannot tolerate a repeat. I want every Londoner to know that I take seriously my responsibility to do everything in my power to ensure everyone, irrespective of their social class or skin colour, is afforded their inalienable right to live in safe and secure housing. I also recognise that after an interminable 7-year wait, no one has been held to account for the pain and loss inflicted. As a city, we stand with the Grenfell community today and every day in their pursuit of justice and change. And as Mayor, I want them to know that I'll support the Met in their investigations, as well as every effort to ban companies held responsible from receiving any further public money. Together we remember with love the 72 Londoners who had their futures stolen. And we pay tribute to the strength and courage of those who carry on in their names. But after more than 7 years, words are not nearly enough. We are in the possession of the truth. Now is the time to deliver justice. Thank you, Chair. I'm sure there'll be questions on this during this morning and other questions as well, which I look forward to answering.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Mayor. There's been no formal request for any other issues on the mayoral update. I'm taking it that no one wishes to ask any questions from what the Mayor's just said. Shall we move on then to questions set out in the priority order paper? Each group has been allocated amount of... Sorry. No?
No, I think they're fine.
Okay, thank you very much. There was just a slight bit of confusion. on my part whether any members wanted to come in. So we now move to questions on the priority order paper. Each group is allocated an amount of time to ask their questions and is proportionate to the size of their group. The first question is on cladding remediation from Assembly Member Mohima.
Thanks for your question. Last week, the Grenfell inquiry, as I've said, found that all 72 deaths were avoidable and that the residents had been badly failed over a number of years by a number of organisations. My heart goes out to everyone affected by the Grenfell Tower fire and those impacted by more recent fires. Everyone deserves the right to live in a safe home, a right denied to the residents of Grenfell Tower. Long-lasting change must be delivered without any further delay. I welcome the opportunity to work with the new Minister for Policing, Fire and Crime Prevention and the Minister for Building Safety and Homelessness to speed up cladding remediation works. I'm heartened by the early response to this and the wider issue of building safety. Following the fire in Dagenham, the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, and Building Safety Minister, Roshanara Ali, held a roundtable with regional leaders, including my Deputy Mayor for the Fire Service and the London Fire Commissioner, to understand how the pace of remediation can be increased. This was a positive meeting that left our team hopeful of an ongoing collaborative approach to implement our shared commitment to improve building safety and accelerate the pace of remediation. Since the publication of the final Grenfell Tower inquiry report, the Deputy Prime Minister has pledged that the government will do all it can to make buildings as safe as they possibly can do. My Deputy Mayor for Housing and Residential Development met with the Building Safety Minister earlier this week to discuss this work. The GLA continues to administer cladding remediation funds for London on behalf of the government, engaging with building owners to work through the complex funding and remediation process. My team has also developed relationships with wider stakeholders, including the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, London Fire Brigade, local authorities, Local Government Association, Homes England and others to support efforts to unblock slow or stuck buildings and increase the pace of remediation. This is a big challenge in London, with around 1,300 buildings currently having a temporary evacuation strategy due to serious fire safety failings. To further mitigate this risk, the LFB is introducing a task force to focus specifically on new enforcement methods to drive remediation.
Thank you, Mayor Khan, and good morning. Thank you very much for that response. It's really helpful to understand where we are following the final report from the Grenfell inquiry. And I know that my colleague, Assembly Member Small Edwards, spoke eloquently about the community that he represents and how that's impacted people there. But my question is about, especially in light of the, as you already said, the horrific fire that happened in Dagenham, and that was on the day of the release of the Grenfell Tower inquiry report. What lessons can be implemented? You've touched on a few, but what further lessons can be implemented to protect Londoners across the whole of the city? We obviously have large numbers of tower blocks in comparison to other parts of the country.
Thanks for your question, and I saw the speech given by Senator Small Edwards, which was very moving. So to give you a scale of an idea of the scale of the challenge, in London, we have more than double the amount of tall buildings compared to the rest of the country combined. Roughly speaking, more than 8,000 versus roughly speaking 4,000 across the country. The response from the LFB to the Dagenham fire last month, and their family still waiting to be rehoused, is quite distressing for them, shows some examples of the lessons learned. The LFB quickly realised that was a building where the built environment wasn't one that was secure, and so there was immediate simultaneous evacuation. So the stay put advice wasn't appropriate in that building. The evacuation took place relatively successfully. It also showed that the investment we put in from City Hall, without any support from the previous government, the tall ladders, the escape hoods were used in this fire to good use. They've been used in the past as well. There are other issues in relation to the 1,300 buildings that I've mentioned that, according to the Commissioner, they are not safe. I know when he gave evidence to the Assembly, he mentioned one building that's under construction that he's got real concerns about. So I'm afraid this is a picture where things haven't improved much since 2017, which is why I'm afraid it's still possible for there to be further tragedy more than 7 years on.
Okay, thank you for that. And on that point about the example of the building under construction, we know that here in London, fire safety standards outlined in the London Plan are already higher than national requirements. You implemented second staircases and had that conversation before that was formalised across the rest of the country. How will you use the review of the London Plan to improve the safety of Londoners' homes to avoid situations like that?
No, thanks for your question. So what we've sought to do in London in advance of the government changing building safety regulations and the law is make sure the London Plan is learning in real time some of the lessons we know from Grenfell Tower. So you're right, the requirements in London are more stringent than across the country in a whole host of issues, not least safety. We welcome the fact that government's announced more plans in relation to building safety. The previous government, to their credit, did pass 2 pieces of legislation in this area which will support us. We'll be reviewing the London Plan going forward. We're going to make sure it evolves to learn the lessons from the final part of the Grenfell Tower inquiry. We've already learned the lessons from the Hackett Review, which was commissioned by the previous government. So, of course, we're going to make sure building safety regulations change, but there's also concern around the LFB have around inspection, not marking your own homework, in relation to standards staying high, but also in relation to investment and resources. The LFB will need those resources to do the inspections and so forth. So a big piece of work still needs to be undertaken. Technology will help in relation to that information being held centrally, but it's really important that there's speedy movement in this area, because you will know from the residents you've heard their impatience with the lack of progress made after more than 7 years.
Assembly Member Desai.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, following the fire in Dagenham, and there was another recent, there was another fire the next day in Blackwall, just across the River Lee, which is also in my constituency. How is City Hall working with the local stakeholders in Buck and Dagenham to support affected residents? And will you consider ways in which City Hall can publicise the official Buck and Dagenham Council's appeal to support those affected?
Thank you. I mean, we are in close contact with Barking and Dagenham Council on the day the fire occurred, and since the big issue, as you know, is the owners of the building and their lack of cooperation with the council. We're trying really hard to get support for the residents from the freeholders. We'll carry on working with Barking and Dagenham Council in that area, but I'm more than happy to amplify the fundraising the council is doing, because obviously council's got finite resources. They can't afford to support the residents like they'd like to, so they've got a crowdfunding page, and we'll amplify that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other further questions? Let's then move on to the next question. And let's move on to Assembly Member Roberts and the reform of the Metropolitan Police.
Thank you for your question. Londoners have the right to expect the very best from their police service. I've been steadfast in my commitment to reforming the Met Police, and I'm doing this work alongside Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley, who has set out a comprehensive reform agenda in the new Met for London Plan. This plan has been an important step on the road to reform, and it contains an ambitious set of activities. The MPs have made significant progress in implementing reform, but it's equally clear there's still a long way to go. Sir Mark and I are united in the view there can be no complacency in the work of reform. The MPS has already made major improvements to Met CC, its call handling function, with £2.5 million investment from City Hall, resulting in a rise to 85% of 999 calls being answered in under 10 seconds, compared to a national average of 78%. The MPS has also reformed its approach to the highest harm sexual offenders through the VORG 100, using data analytics to identify and target the top men and women who pose the most risk. The government's praised the Met's work and have committed to scaling this approach up across the country. A priority for the Commissioner has been raising standards and rooting out the officers who should not be in the service. The Commissioner has taken decisive action on suspensions, and both the volume of misconduct hearings and the number of dismissals increased last year compared to the year before. The MPS has also launched the UK's first anti-corruption and abuse reporting service in partnership with Crime Stoppers. Raising standards and making improvements to the service Londoners receive are crucial building blocks for improving the trust and confidence Londoners have in their police service. I meet regularly with the Commissioner to discuss a wide range of issues, including progress on reform. Through our new London Policing Board, which was recommended by the Case Review, we've ensured there is transparency for Londoners and the progress the MPS are making on reform. The board also enables outside expertise and the voice of Londoners to inform MPS work. I'll continue to use my powers and resources to provide the MPS with investment to help provide effective frontline policing and to deliver the service Londoners deserve for the future. I'll continue to support and challenge the MPS in this vital work.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning. The London Assembly is the directly democratically elected body. It's here to scrutinise not just you, but also the work of partners, such as the Met and MOPAC. But the Commissioner is now refusing to attend regularly Police and Crime Committee questions. At the July budget meeting, they weren't able to send people with operational oversight. So, and what they're claiming is that the Policing Board for London is now their go-to place for scrutiny and accountability. I don't agree. Do you?
Well, I saw that the Assistant Commissioner was here yesterday speaking to the Police and Crime Committee, and we often have senior operational officers come into City Hall to speak to the Assembly. They also, by the way, regularly appear before the Home Affairs Select Committee, the London Crime Justice Board, the Violence Reduction Unit Task Force, which meets later on this afternoon, and the London Policing Board. I would argue the Met Police Service, as a police service, is the most accountable police service there is in the country. Could we do things better? Of course we can. And I'm sure the Commissioner will take on board your comments. I'll ensure the Met Police Service see your comments and your concerns in relation to your ability to support and hold the police to account.
Thank you. In addition to doing that, will you make a direct request compelling the Met, the Commissioner or senior officers to attend Police and Crime Committee meetings when required and to attend necessary budgeting meetings?
Well, as I hope you'd have seen from yesterday, often an Assistant Commissioner or Deputy Commissioner or another officer with operational experience, sometimes not, when it comes to things like human resources, are actually on the details far better than the Commissioner would. No criticism of the Commissioner. And so often they're better placed to address concerns members have. There's also, of course, the plenary sessions as well, where members speak directly to the Commissioner. As I said to you, I'll make sure the Commissioner sees your comments so he understands the views and the feelings from yourself.
Thank you. I think it's fair to say that there's been a failure of the Metropolitan Police, but I would suggest also a failure of MOPAC. And we've had a Deputy Mayor for Policing in position for 8 years and has recently been reappointed for possibly another 4. We've had scandal after scandal after scandal. We've had failure after failure after failure. We've had devastating report after devastating report after devastating report. What is it going to take for you to lose confidence in your Deputy Mayor for Policing?
We've actually seen, because of the hard work of the Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime, a lot of these issues have come to the surface that otherwise wouldn't. Whether it's the London Rape Review that otherwise wouldn't, Operation Soteria that otherwise wouldn't, the Stalking Review that otherwise wouldn't, referring the Stephen Port investigation to the HMI, which otherwise wouldn't, asking the HMI and IRPC to investigate the policing of Clapham Common Vigil, which otherwise wouldn't, the review of the MPS Witness Care Unit, publishing disproportionality in relation to misconduct systems, the work in relation to reviewing the Met's gangs matrix, another work we've done over the last few years to make sure we support the Met Police Service and hold them to account. In fact, we were criticised in relation to some of the tasks undertaken by the Deputy Mayor for Police and Crime and myself, holding the Met Police Service to account by the members of this Assembly, not yourself. And so we take our responsibility very seriously, both the Deputy Mayor and myself, and I've got full confidence in her and our ability to continue to support the police and hold them to account as well.
Excellent. All this good work and so many scandals. Thank you very much.
Assembly Member Bailey or Best? Best. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, Mr Mayor. One of the biggest barriers to reform is the extremely low confidence in the police and also the issues with employment. One of the best programmes that serves London through the Met is the Volunteer Police Cadet Programme. We see cadets from a really wide variety of backgrounds not only gain trust in the police by seeing them perhaps in a different light, but also see what a wonderful career joining the police could be in future. Can you outline your commitment to making sure we continue to have a successful police cadet programme in London?
Yeah, thank you for your really generous comments about the cadets. I think you've probably met as many cadets, as I have in the recent months, and they're fantastic. They're a credit to themselves, their families, and their communities. I think what the police are doing is targeting their resources where they can, so they'll still be cadets in relation to those who up until the age of 18. I think those above the age of 18 are being encouraged to get involved in policing in other ways, whether it's specials or other ways as well. This is an example of the police using their finite resources in a way they think prioritises the issue of preventing crime. But you're right in relation to the difference it made to trust and confidence, because the families of these cadets and their neighbours and so forth got more confidence in the police because they knew somebody who was in the police service who was a cadet. The Commissioner is well aware of the consequences of this change, but I think he would make the point that he's trying to use the finite resources he has in a sensible way. But there are options for those above the age of 17 to get involved in policing.
Thanks, Mr. And just to confirm, it's obviously really good to see now the levels of police cadets has risen to pre-pandemic levels. And is that a trend that you're hoping we can see in the future? I know what you're saying about the age, but that the level of commitment and numbers will continue to rise or stay the same?
Yeah, there's two issues in relation to the concerns I've got in relation to the question you raised. One is the numbers of cadets. You're right, we want it to go even higher. But secondly, specials went down as well. I know some members of the Assembly, past and present, have been specials, but that also took a big dip as well. We're trying to get those up as well. And they'll actually help us in our challenge of, you mentioned trust and confidence, in relation to earning back the trust and confidence, because if people know people in the Met Police Service, that'll make them realise that they're like us trying to do public service.
Assembly Member Bailey.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Given the fact that the police cadets is the most diverse thing the Met does, there's children from all of our communities involved in this. It's the best interface the police have with young people. It's a two-way interface to learn an awful lot about it. And of course, it acts as a recruitment gateway. Could we make a plea that you put some funds in? You know, we know that you've supported police, that's fine, but could you specifically put some money into the police cadets to make sure it's sustainable?
Yes, thanks for your question, and also thanks for your comments about the cadets. I know the service you give to our city in relation to being a volunteer, a uniformed volunteer, past and present. So what we have given, as you know, hundreds of millions of pounds additional to the Met Police Service. What the Commissioner would say if he was here is he's using every pound and penny he can to address the concerns which were raised in a previous question around reform and other issues. And he's got to prioritise his finite resources, as indeed we do. So we have, as you know, given additional money to the Met Police Service every year since I've been Mayor. Sometimes we say what the money's for example, the call centre that we needed addressing. I think, and I'd support the Met Police Service on this in relation to their priorities. The cadets, you know, is not as high, I'm afraid, as some of the other priorities the Met Police Service have.
I take your point about money give to police and they must have some flexibility, but that's why I use the words, could you specifically give them some money specifically for cadets, because it supports the outcomes of young people in so many diverse and positive ways. And of course, if you say to them this money is for the cadets, and of course that means it can be a relatively small amount, it would have a massive impact.
Well, as you know, we've given money to the fire service in relation to their cadets.
Yeah.
So can I suggest in a respectful way, when it comes to later on in the show when we set our budgets, that maybe one of the submissions that the member makes to me and the team in relation to budgets going forward, I'm more than happy to look at those submissions from the member. And he makes also an important point. In the grand scheme of things, actually the money we're talking about isn't huge. It is when it comes to the police, making sure every pound and penny is spent, but I've seen the difference in the fire service our funding made. So can I suggest in a respectful way, later in the show when it comes to his group making submissions, that's one of the things they put in there, because we in the round look at submissions from all members of the Assembly, as well as other submissions during consultation.
Thank you, Chair. Oh, thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Back to you.
I'd like to welcome the Redbridge Disabled Women's Welfare Association that recently joined us in the chamber. Okay, let's go back to questions. Good Growth Fund, Assembly Member Garbett.
Thank you for your question. London is a market city. I'm proud of the diverse mix of more than 300 public, private and community managed markets, both retail and wholesale, that support health, wealth and social integration across our city. London's markets play a vital role as places of employment, trade and leisure, and they reflect the cultural diversity of the city. During my time as Mayor, our Good Growth Fund has allocated £20 million of its funding directly to market-focused projects, funding projects from refurbishment of infrastructure to public realm improvements and business support or promotion. The Blue Market in Bermondsey is a great example. Here we invested £2 million to revitalise a marketplace at the heart of the community, creating an inclusive meeting place using thoughtful design. The funding also provided business support alongside creating opportunities for new young traders, securing a sustainable future for the market in the local area. A partnership between the London Borough of Southwark Markets team, Blue Bermondsey Business Improvement District and Big Local Works and the GLA has meant that this project has become more than the sum of its parts, responding carefully to local needs. This is just one example of how we've used funding to effectively support local authorities and other partners in revitalising London's markets, delivering long-term benefits to local people and protecting local cultural heritage. Investment through my regeneration programmes always advocates a place-based partnership approach. This means working closely with the full range of local people to carefully balance priorities and think strategically about what's needed in the long term. Following on from the Good Growth Fund, our civic partnership programme is a good example of how we look to enhance local cultural heritage. A small amount of cash is initially provided to bring people together and develop a strategy ahead of further capital investment to ensure the widest range of voices and lived experience would inform decisions. At a pan-London level, my London Markets Board provides a diverse strategic forum to represent the interests of the sector and explore the issues that are shaping markets across our city. I remain committed to continuing to support London's markets through investment, advocacy and the sharing of best practice to get the most of these vital community resources.
Thank you for that response. And I'd just like to say that I think the Good Growth Fund is brilliant and I like any investment into our markets, which obviously we both share as really important pride of London. But I've heard some stories from some other markets to add to the stories that you've shared. So a couple of weeks ago, I visited Queen's Market in Newham and spoke to some of the traders and the Friends of Queen Market group, some of which are watching online. Newham Council were given money through the Good Growth Fund, but almost £4 million is being spent on a creative wellbeing space, which is next to the market, while traders are being told that there isn't enough money for essential works like fixing the flooring, which has become very hazardous to shoppers. Also over in Hackney, the fund's been used to redesign the pavements into kind of a decorative flooring, whereas traders were calling for money to, change the awnings and some guttering, so some real essentials. So my concern is that the fund isn't really going into those things that traders are asking for, and they're the people that make these markets what they are. So I just wondered if you're confident about how the community engagement part of the fund is going.
Well, can I thank you for your question, but also thank you for raising the issue of Queen's Market with GLA earlier on this year. So I've asked the regeneration team to work with the council to look into the issues you raised in relation to Queen's Market Newham to make sure it does meet the needs of the market traders and local residents. And I'll make sure, Chair, on officer rights to the member to give an update in relation to the work we're doing with Queen's Market Newham. I wasn't aware of the concerns raised around Hackney. Can I take that away? But the point she makes is the right one. The purpose of the Good Growth Fund is to support good growth, right? And it's the traders who are integral to good growth. As I said in my answer, we are a market city. So can I take this away to make sure that with the best of interests, often it's good intentions, but it's not leading to what we'd like it to do. And let me just recheck myself that I'm happy in relation to the investment is reaching those parts of the community we want it to reach.
That would be brilliant, because another story I've heard is how the £800,000 has been put into lighting that's made the market darker in Queen's Market. So lots of the traders are having to buy their own lights and use their own electricity. People like the haberdashery are struggling for people to be able to see the threads match the fabric, and people can't look at jewellery. So obviously you can understand how that makes it really difficult for traders. So I'd really invite you to go and visit Queen's Market. I'm happy to come along with you. It's quite close to City Hall, so we could go together and speak to the traders and Friends of Queen's Market and just see how it's going for them. But yeah, anything you can do to look into this, I think you've understood that it's important that this really meets the needs of traders.
Chair, I'll make sure we write to the member and give her an update in relation to that work. And if need be, we'll go and try and get a 2-for-1 offer as well. I'm good at haggling. I just say that I'm really good.
It would be brilliant to visit with you.
Yeah.
I think, Friends of Queen's Market would really be delighted to see you there. So, looking forward to it.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you.
Let's move on to the next question in the name of Assembly Member Hall.
Thank you for your question. Whilst the Met Police Service has a clear plan for reform and has made a good start, it's clear they have more work to do to achieve the far-reaching systematic and cultural reform required. Yeah. Both the Commissioner and I have been and will continue to be frank with Londoners about the challenges facing the Met Police Service and the journey ahead of it. I'm fully committed to supporting the Met Police Service to reform and have established the public-facing London Policing Board to provide a transparent mechanism for Londoners to see their police force being held to account and supported on the delivery of the changes needed. The Inspectorate has acknowledged that the size and scale of the transformation being carried out at the Met Police Service is significant and that the new Met for London plan is the right plan to mitigate its concerns. It's now down to the MPS to deliver. The MPS has begun its journey to deliver the step change in culture and performance required. We've seen some important improvements, such as in responses to 999 and 101 calls now better than the national response times. Work is underway to improve support for victims to ensure that the MPS complies with the Code of Practice for Victims of Crime. That's backed with £3 million in additional funding from City Hall and with the support of London's Independent Victims Commissioner. The Commissioner's prioritisation of managing offenders and suspects has led to work to expand public protection teams of experts in serious crimes, such as child sexual abuse, stalking and sexual offences. This work involves the innovative use of data to identify and tackle the most dangerous predators and improving training for these complex and sensitive roles. The focus on the top 100 perpetrators of violence against women and girls is yielding results. 45 offenders have already been convicted. But we know that there are more and urgent improvements that are required to ensure that the management of offenders and suspects is of a consistent high standard. This is something that I, the Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime and the London Policing Board will be scrutinising closely in the coming weeks and months. Londoners should rightly expect to have the best possible police service. However, reform of this scale and complexity takes time. I'll continue to support and challenge the Commissioner to deliver the progress required to ensure the MPS commands the trust and confidence of all Londoners as we build a safer London for all.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and good morning. And may I start by saying I completely agree with Assembly Member Roberts' comments, and thank you for those. I didn't know they were coming. When you mentioned the good things that the police are doing at the moment, I'm surprised you didn't mention my favourite thing, which of course is that they found that stop and search, the inspector found its use was both fair and effective. And I was very pleased to see this. I know you were very against stop and search. I personally think it's a tool that we give the police in order for them to get these knives off our streets. Now, for anybody watching that doesn't know about the Peel inspection, the Peel inspection revealed that the Met is failing in almost all of its areas of work. Most shockingly, investigating crime and managing offenders, they received the worst possible rating of inadequate. The inspector said that he had serious concerns about the way the Met is handling its main responsibilities. Have you, as the Police and Crime Commissioner, actually spoken to any other Police and Crime Commissioners about the way they're improving things?
Well, firstly, just to clarify, in case of a misunderstanding, in fact, the Inspectorate supported how I think stop and search should be used, which is intelligence-led, based on the intelligence, which is what the Met Police Service are doing, which has been recognised by the Inspectorate, rather than stopping and searching everybody, which is a view that some people hold. In relation to the conversation we have with other police and crime commissioners and chief constables, we regularly meet with them. In fact, the HMI convenes a meeting during our police performance oversight group meetings where there are other experts available to discuss issues, including from College of Policing, chief constables, and others. And often, some of the things that Met Police Service are doing are used by others, and sometimes Met Police Service learns from others. In fact, some colleagues from other police forces around the country are supporting the Commissioner in relation to some of the challenges identified by the HMI, which led to the MPS going into Engage.
So have you actually spoken to any of these? I mean, some of them have made considerable improvements since 2022, which very sadly we have not.
I've spoken to a number of experts across the country. In fact, what the Inspectorate recognised was that the Met Police Service's new Met for London plan was the right plan. In fact, there weren't any issues raised by the HMI except for one area where the new Met for London plan isn't already addressing those issues. I think the issue is the Met Police Service now recognise there are problems. There is now a plan to address those problems. The Inspectorate was a snapshot before those plans have had a chance to be actioned. And over the course of the next few months, you'll see those plans actioned. And we're hoping that will lead to the changes that the HMI talked about.
You see, the problem is, I've been sitting here and you've been sitting there, more importantly, as the Police and Crime Commissioner for 8 years. Things have got worse. Knife crime is now at a record high. We've got gun crime up 20%. Business robbery is up 74%. Recruitment is down. Public confidence is down. And the Met, quite honestly, has gone backwards, certainly since its last inspection, and certainly under your watch, as it were. And yet your first response to the Peel inspection was that it was, and I'm quoting, heading in the right direction. Do you honestly think things are heading in the right direction when you've got all those dreadful statistics?
Well, I think I was paraphrasing what the HMI said, which is really important. The size and scale of the transformation being carried out by the MPS is significant. The new Met for London plan is the right plan to mitigate its concerns, and we can go back talking about the last 8 years. Every crime is a tragedy. Homicide is down. Those aged below 25 injured by a knife is down. Residential burglaries are down. Lethal discharge of guns is down in the context of more than £1 billion taken out of the Met Police budget. You've seen crime going up across the country. And in relation to trust and confidence from Londoners in the Met Police Service not only is stabilised, it's higher than the national average and higher than confidence in similar police forces, whether it's West Midlands, Greater Manchester or West Yorkshire. So we are making progress, as recognised by the work we're doing with the HMI in the Police Performance Oversight Group meetings.
Yes, and you're right. They're right to say that the size and scale of the problems are significant. They are significant and have become so under your watch. Thank you, Chairman.
I've got a number of Assembly members who wish to participate in this question. I'm going to call on Assembly Member Wilson first, followed by Assembly Member Lord Bailey, then followed by Leonie Cooper, Assembly Member, and Assembly Member Turrell.
Thank you, Chair. I think it makes more sense for me to come in now than to wait for my question as it was tabled later on in the agenda. I think some of this you've already obviously discussed in response to Assembly Member Hall's questions, but I think it's worth repeating for the sake of everybody watching as a reminder just exactly how damning this report is and has been, where the best score for any of the headline measures is merely adequate, that being for police powers and treating the public fairly and respectfully, but everything else leaves so much to be desired. Preventing and deterring crime requires improvement. Responding to the public requires improvement. Investigating crime, one of the absolute core things that a police service should be doing, inadequate. Protecting vulnerable people requires improvement. Managing offenders and suspects, inadequate. Building, supporting and protecting the workforce requires improvement. Leadership and force management requires improvement. All of those are damning and individually, but particularly taken in the round. If a private company was behaving or sort of performing this badly, how long do you think the boss would still be in place?
Well, that's one of the reasons why we got rid of the previous boss. And there's a new boss now running the Met Police Service. Not sure where he's been. I was criticised for doing so, by the way, by some of this Assembly. I think the HMI report shows a vindication of my decision. So there's now a new commissioner running the Met Police Service, and he spent some time speaking to and listening to Londoners to come up with a new Met for London plan. Firstly, recognising there's a problem, not having his head in the sand, speaking to and engaging with Londoners about what they'd like to see in relation to reform, going away and thinking about some of the views he heard from those various public meetings he personally took charge of when he first became Commissioner with his senior team. working on a plan, consulting on that plan, then finalising that plan in a new Met for London plan. And what that plan does is has the confidence of His Majesty's Inspectorate as recognised in the most recent Peel report. And I think what the Inspectorate said was the new Met for London plan is the right plan to mitigate its concerns. So look, we've begun turning the tanker around. An inspection done whilst the tanker's turning around shows it's still not right. I agree with that analysis. I'll be supporting the Commissioner in having that tanker completely turned around, whether it's a private company, a tanker, or the police service.
Thank you. You say we're in the process of turning it around, but we're still going backwards. And comparing these judgments with the previous report, in nearly every measure that's compared in both reports, it's either stayed the same or getting worse. And I'm particularly concerned about preventing crime and antisocial behaviour. I mean, that has got to be arguably the most important role that a police service is doing. Because for any victim of crime or potential victim of crime, surely prevention is always better than cure. And for that to have dropped 2 whole grades from good to requires improvement is terrifying. And then investigating crime, probably the second most important. Once prevention has failed, then you need to step in and rectify the situation. And again, it's dropped from requires improvement to inadequate. So it's going backwards. And compared to 2016, I know the previous inspection regime had different criteria, but 2 of the 3 main areas in the 2016 report were judged good, and only 1 was judged as requires improvement. So overall, during your tenure as mayor and as the PCC, you talk about the boss, but ultimately you are the boss. The buck stops with you. You're the PCC for London. Is the Met performing better or worse since you became the PCC for London?
Well, I'm disappointed the member, in advance of preparing for this question, didn't read the report. Because what the report says, and I quote, "It isn't possible to make direct comparisons between the grades awarded in this Peel inspection and those from the previous cycle of Peel inspections. This is because we have increased our focus on making sure forces are achieving appropriate outcomes for the public, and in some cases we've changed the aspects of policing we inspect." So the premise of his question is knocked away by the HMI himself. But listen, I agree with him. The basic Peel principles are about keeping the peace, about preventing crime, and the police needs to make huge progress on this issue. The Commissioner is not in denial about this. He recognises that these are basic Peelian principles. And the member's right to be angry about the fact that there's still more progress to be done.
Can we talk about outcomes then, Mr Mayor? So since you've been in position, over 100,000 knife offences since 2016, around 1,000 homicides, nearly 250,000 robberies, and all 3 of those measures of particularly serious crimes, the most recent annual figures are significantly higher than the 2016-17 figures around the time that you inherited the position. We have shoplifting, domestic burglary, car crime effectively decriminalised, police station closures right across London, the structure of the basic command units, meaning that Outer London in particular is increasingly becoming a police-free zone. So is London safer or less safe than 2016, and who is responsible for that?
Well, look, I mean, he mentioned the numbers in relation to his question. What he's not given is a per capita analysis of our population's risen by more than 1 million over a recent past. But I've been quite clear since I was first elected in 2016 about the consequences of austerity from 2010. We've lost more than £1 billion from the Met Police Service's budget. When I first became mayor, more than 80% of the Met Police's budget was from central government because of cuts. That's now way below 75%. We're having to fill the massive hole left by central government, which has led to not just the police buildings having to be sold off, but police officers being cut, police community officers being cut, police staff being cut, and that's got consequences.
Thank you. The Assembly Member Wilson is now out of time. Let's move on to Assembly Member Lord Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning again, Mr Mayor. If Assembly Member Roberts made some comments about the assurances we've received from Deputy Mayor over the years about the progress she had made in making MOPAC look more closely at the police. We've had umpteen different meetings where she's given so many assurances and talked about the meetings and the new structures and the new profiles and all the new tactics going on. Do you feel like they have worked?
Yeah, we're making huge progress in relation to identifying the big problems in the Met Police Service. We've got a plan in place to address these issues. Some of the things we were talking about in London have been taken on board across the country, from Operation Sotario to the VORG 100 in relation to data analytics, the work around stalking, the work around GPS tagging, the scrutiny, open transparency of holding the police to account. Is because of the work we've been doing that Dame Louise Casey got involved in a review in the Met Police Service, which led to many other recommendations. That wouldn't have happened but for the work of MOPAC and the Deputy Mayor and the team. Use of handcuffs, I know it's an issue of concern to you in relation to children. That issue was only highlighted because of the concerns raised by MOPAC and other colleagues as well. Guy's Matrix, an issue I know that's dear to your heart as well, was an issue that was taking place before we took office, an issue that was reviewed and got rid of under our mayoralty. And there are other issues I can talk about, trust and confidence, another issue that you care about.
Mayor, thank you for your answer. You've picked up lots of individual things, all very important, but this is the overall ability, will and capability of MOPAC to look at the Metropolitan Police. And we have been given many assurances in the Police and Crime Committee, which now feel a bit hollow. And the question I want to put to you is, do you think it's time that you now take a closer role, a personal closer role in scrutinising the police and helping MOPAC deliver on that particular role?
I think you've paraphrased what Dame Louise Casey said about the ineffectiveness of the PCC. That's why she recommended the London Policing Board.
No. I think you misunderstood. I'm talking about you. I'm asking, will you do more directly with MOPAC to make sure that they are scrutinising the police? The Peel report makes for really disappointing reading. We want the police to be supported, we want them to do better, and it would appear that MOPAC are falling down on that. And I'm asking you, can you step in and can you do more? Can you attend some of these meetings? Can you more closely see what the outcomes are? Because what we're receiving in PCC is lots of reassurance, lots of mechanisms, lots of meetings, but very little progress. And I'm asking a direct question, can you personally do more, throw your weight behind it?
I think David Louise Casey accepted that the PCC wasn't doing the job that we'd like it to do, and so that's why she recommended a London Policing Board, which I chair. And so I chair the London Policing Board, and the experts on the Policing Board are supporting the Met Police Service in relation to the changes that are required. Key metrics are going to be published about assessing progress going forward. And it is really important that we support the police, but also hold them to account. It's really hard when the Met Police Service has been, to quote the Commissioner, bent out of shape. We've got 9,000 new police officers who joined in the last 3 years alone. Just think about the impact that has in relation to the Met Police Service. So look, we will make sure we do what we can to support and hold the police to account. We can't take away from the consequences of the last 14 years.
Mayor, just let me try one more time. We are talking about MOPAC, which you are directly responsible for. They're yours, the Mayor's Office of Police and Crime. I'm asking, will you take a much more direct hand in making sure they expedite their role better? What's happened in the Peel report is a demonstration that some of what they're meant to be doing is not being done effectively, notwithstanding all of the reassurances we've had from the Deputy Mayor, which now feel very, very hollow, as laid out by my colleague A.M. Roberts. I'm asking you to directly do something. This is important. In my own community, our children are being murdered at quite a rate. We'd like someone to support us in scrutinising the Met to do better. That falls to MOPAC. MOPAC are not doing that job correctly. Clearly, can you do more with your own office to support that? That's all I'm asking for.
Well, that's not the evidence. That's not the evidence of the Peel report, and I'd encourage the member to read the Peel report.
Londoners will be hugely disappointed with that dismissive answer to what is the single most important thing happening to London today. Black children are dying on the streets of London because somebody in this building is not doing their job properly. Thank you, Chair.
Let's move to Assembly Member Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. You referred earlier on, Mr. Mayor, to the underfunding issue. I can remember back in the day when the first Mayor of London first introduced the dedicated ward teams, and they operated on a 3-2-1 basis. 3 PCSOs, 2 PCs and 1 sergeant in every ward across London. From 2014-15, we have seen £1 billion taken out of the Metropolitan Police across London. So when we're talking about requires improvement or inadequate,
would you agree with me that the funding for the police service across London, which you've tried to shore up by putting money in, has been inadequate from the Home Office?
Thank you for your questions and your observations. And that's recognised by the HMI, who talks about the concerns around neighbourhood policing. Neighbourhood policing requires investment. If you're taking more than £1 billion out of the police budget, and the previous mayor got rid of the 321 the member refers to, you can't be surprised if there's not the strong neighbourhood policing that Londoners demand, deserve, but also the HMI recognises is crucial for preventing crime, but also fighting crime as well. So since I've taken over as the mayor, we've introduced neighbourhood teams. We're now funding 2 police officers per ward and 1 PCSO per ward. The issue we've had is obstructions, because obviously big pressures on the police service because of issues that are well publicised. No additional support from the previous government, no special grants, not getting the NIC money we receive. We've managed to have 87% of our officers locally, but there's obstructions. And so there are consequences of policies of the previous government, which some who've got selective amnesia don't want to talk about.
Would you also agree with me that this has been over the last 10, 20 years in the context of changes in crime, changes in the nature of crime, and changes also in our response to crime? So we're now expecting the police to respond, and quite rightly too, far more to violence against women and girls, whereas maybe 20 years ago that was just dismissed as a domestic. We've also seen the rise of cybercrime, online crime. We've also seen the rise of modern slavery. Would you agree then that taking money out of the police force in the context of rising crime and different kinds of crime is also potentially added to what this report is not good? I mean, I think we can all agree on that, but there is context to it.
Look, I think that no one should be under the impression that the Commissioner or myself aren't taking this report with the seriousness it deserves. It's a very sober read. But I think the point you're making is really important, which is not just the points the members raised, Chair. Our population has risen by more than 1 million. There are even more protests. There are even more events taking place in our capital city. Mental health. The Commissioner was criticised for trying to bring in right care, right person. But that is important for the care of the person who's mentally unwell. But also, there's a huge drain on Met Police resources. The Met Police Service, police officers shouldn't be, being used as somebody who has chaperones for people mentally unwell or social workers. And so the Met Police Service used to be the port of last call. They're now the port of first call, which brings additional pressure on the police service. And without sufficient resources, they can't respond to that. But also, if you've got, commissioners having to make budget cuts, and they're being told to keep frontline police officers, don't be surprised if the back office operation completely falls apart. Forensics, police staff, data inputting, police stations being closed off and so forth, which has consequences. For example, local ward officers being quite a distance away from the ward they're supposed to police.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Mayor. The Peel report, as you mentioned, makes reference to the new Met for London plan, which includes an ambition to open new police bases across the capital. Yet, despite this, the police are planning to exit the lease on the William Barefoot Drive police base. The reason being given that another base is being opened elsewhere in Greenwich. Can I clarify if there is a one-in, one-out policy to police bases at the moment?
Chair, I'm not aware of the sufficient, the specific detail. There's no policy of one in, one out. But can I write to him in relation to his particular base that he's referring to? It is the policy to make sure every borough has one 24 hours police station front counter. We're trying to make police bases as near to or inside the ward where the officers police. I'm happy to drop him a note in relation to this particular issue, but there is no one in, one out in relation to bases.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that clarity. Speaking out, the superintendent for Bromley mentioned last night at a Bromley Council scrutiny meeting that his officers are looking for a location for a new base in Nottingham. Given that the William Barefoot Drive base, which is just metres outside of my constituency in Greenwich, is there, while he's writing to me, he can't answer, could he ask MOPAC to assess whether or not this base could be used for both boroughs?
I will do, Chair. I'll also ask MOPAC to speak to the council in relation to any ideas. They've got often councils know their community, well, no, always councils know their community far better than civil servants in Whitehall or City Hall.
Thank you for that answer as well, Mr Mayor. Returning to the theme of the part of the new Met for London which mentioned new bases opening, Erith and Belvedere in my constituency are also places in urgent need of having a base restored. Can I ask what work MOPAC is currently doing to identify places where these bases may open once funding is identified?
Thank you. Can I say, I know there's going to be a groan when I say these words, but there's a review of the estate strategy. For those that don't know, the reason for this is because it's been just been taken forever, an inordinate amount of time in my view, and the Commissioner knows my view in relation to this. The issue the Commissioner has, just being frank, is his lack of certainty about future resources and staff. But he understands that everyone wants there to be bases in their communities, and he understands the groans that will have been heard in New Scotland Yard by members of the Assembly when I mentioned the words estates strategy. Can I get back to him in relation to where we are in relation to the progress that he's referring to and stuff? But it is a frustration for everyone, the Commissioner as well, because he's got to wait for the work to come back in relation to what's needed, what buildings aren't fit for purpose, irrespective of the review, because they're just simply poor quality, roofs leaking and so forth.
Thank you for that, then, Mr Mayor. But can I just clarify then that it is your ambition as Mayor to fulfil that part of the report that includes opening of new bases?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you. No further question.
Thank you very much. Let's now return to a question from Assembly Member Desai, protecting communities from extremism.
Thank you, and thank you for your question. The disorder, racism and violence we saw in towns and cities across the country in the aftermath of the tragic killings of 3 young girls in Southport was truly appalling. The heartbreaking death of 3 children should have been a time of mourning across the country. But shamefully, this moment was hijacked by the far right, who used the deaths to promote their poisonous, hateful ideas, pushing out disinformation on social media designed to incite hatred of minority communities. The resulting thuggery and criminality, which included unashamed acts of racism, has understandably left many communities feeling scared. This is particularly true for Muslim and migrant communities who have seen disgraceful attacks on mosques and immigration centres. Action will be taken against anyone thinking of breaking the law or spreading hatred and fear in our city. In recent weeks, we've seen rightly severe sentences handing down to some of the people involved in this criminality elsewhere in the UK. I'd like to thank the MPS and other partners for their swift response to the disorder and the preparations that were made in London to respond to any potential criminality. Thankfully, we didn't see the same shameful scenes in our city as were witnessed elsewhere in the country. Instead, we saw Londoners coming together to stand up to hate. Londoners needed support when the violence erupted elsewhere, so we acted to deliver a series of sessions to mosque leaders, workers and volunteers on safety and security. I attended a session in Kensington where some of my small editors was also present. There was another session last week in North London, and another one is due to take place on Sunday. These workshops build on existing programmes, including a long-standing partnership with the Community Security Trust that delivers regular free webinars and seminars to any place of worship. Over the last 4 years, we've delivered continuous record-breaking investment through our Shared Endeavour Fund to deliver civil society projects to strengthen communities against extremism, encourage more Londoners to stand up to hate, protect Londoners vulnerable to radicalisation, and stop the spread of hateful ideologies. This has included work to counter the far right, and I'm pleased to continue this funding for the 5th year running.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, you talked about social media, and the Prime Minister very recently, quite rightly, pointed out that, and warned the keyboard warriors that you do not work in a law-free zone. So in light of his comments, Mr. Mayor, can you outline what changes to the Online Safety Act do you feel are necessary to prevent harmful misinformation spreading online?
So, in between the draft bill, the work being done, the online safety bill, and the act being passed, a lot of it was diluted, and so and that's the first point. The second point is the Online Safety Act hasn't really come into commencement yet. So what I'd like the government to do is to make sure it's fully operationalised as soon as possible, so it comes into effect. I think Ofcom have a really important role to play. I think they should be doing their work now in relation to reviewing stuff online rather than waiting for the Act to be commenced. And then the third thing is the government must review straight away whether the Act as passed is fit for purpose. If not, there needs to be amendments made to the Act to make sure it's fit for purpose.
Mr. Mayor, you will have seen that last week at the plenary I put forward a motion that was not opposed, condemning the riots and calling on you to create an integration and community cohesion action plan, the two are different things, for London to build and strengthen communities in our city. This will build on the objectives of the update to the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Strategy of 2022. Will you commit to this?
Firstly, Chair, I think that those watching this must recognise the cross-party nature of what the members just talked about. The Assembly, all four parties, none of the four parties opposed what the member suggested last week, which is really important because we are a united city when it comes to these sorts of issues. Aside from we put aside party politics. I'm more than happy for the Deputy Mayor to look into the motion as passed by the Assembly unopposed.
Mr. Mayor, so some of the unrest that you've seen over the past few weeks has highlighted the increased pressure on London in terms of policing London as our capital city. The marches around Gaza alone have cost the Met something in the region of £42 million. Although the right to protest lawfully and peacefully is very, very important, policing Notting Hill costs the Met around £11.8 million every year. Do you still recognise, as we both have in the past, that London's current NIC grant, the National and International Capital City grant, is insufficient, to say the least? And do you intend on continuing to lobby the government to raise London's NIC grant?
So the members given just some of the examples of the events taking place in our capital city that the police have to police. There are ceremonial events from Trooping the Colour to the recent coronation. There's New Year's Eve celebrations. There's sporting events. There are cultural events. There are visits from state leaders and others. And the protests he's mentioned just one of them. There are other protests take place on a regular basis across our city. In one of the meetings I've had with the Home Secretary, I've raised the issue of the National and International Capital Grants issue and the shortage there's been for a number of years, because it is really important for the government to understand the shortage over successive years has caused big problems to the Met Police Service. Abstractions is just one example of the pressures. Our officers, frankly speaking, are knackered because of the long shift they're doing, counselling, leave and so forth, working weekends. It's really important to give them respite as well. So a number of problems caused by lack of sufficient resources for the Met Police Service.
And Mr. Mayor, finally, with regard to what you said earlier about the ineffectiveness of the Police and Crime Committee committee's work, if I heard you correctly, there are, of course, Labour members who sat on this PCC, including the chair. My understanding of of Casey and the views about the policing board are different to what I think you said. I actually discussed this with Baroness Casey in this chamber, in that corner, in fact, and she actually saw the policing board not as an alternative to the PCC, but as an addition to strengthen accountability measures. She certainly saw a role, commended the work of the PCC, has appeared before us. So I do beg to differ on this particular issue. Baroness Casey certainly, to me and to the members, did not comment on our ineffectiveness, but saw the policing board as an additional safeguard in ensuring the accountability of the Met.
Yeah, the member has misunderstood my comments. Nobody's suggesting the Transport Committee goes because there's a TfL board meeting. They both have a purpose to serve. It's not either or. It's explaining the importance of having a transparent board that I chair, that is supportive of the police, provides assistance and expertise, as well as holding them to account. And I apologise if he was under the impression it's one or the other.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Let's give you some information. So the next question from Assembly Member Lord Bailey, which is for you, Mr. Mayor, is 2898, I think, has been withdrawn. It is now a written question. The next question on safety of London train stations in the name of Assembly Member Turrell has been withdrawn and is a written question, which is 2931. That means we then go to the question on misogyny as extremism in the name of Assembly Member Harani.
It's really helpful. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your question. I welcome the announcement by the Home Secretary that a review of the counter-extremism strategy will consider classifying misogyny as a form of extremism. Misogyny often manifests as violence against women and girls, and in the most extreme circumstances can drive terrorism. I've long called for misogyny to be classified as a hate crime, as I believe our response to misogyny must properly reflect the risk it poses to our society. I'm clear that we must not simply respond to violence against women and girls, we must prevent it. That's why we put prevention at the heart of our Tackling Violence Against Women and Girls strategy. Our strategy seeks to understand the underlying drivers of harassment, abuse and violence against women and girls and brings public sector agencies together with communities to address them. It aims to tackle both harmful attitudes and the harmful behaviour of men and boys. To support this ambitious strategy, I've overseen investment of over £233 million to ensure we're tackling this head-on, funding work from supporting victims through to intervening with perpetrators. A key example is our successful Have a Word campaign, which encourages men to challenge misogynistic attitudes. The campaign video was viewed over 15 million times, and an evaluation of the campaign found that 85% of men and boys who saw it said they would now call out misogynistic behaviour. Our prevention work also included £1 million investment in the introduction of a free toolkit and training programme for secondary school teachers in London to equip them with the knowledge to speak to pupils about tackling misogyny and gender-based violence and promote healthy relationships. If we hope to succeed in identifying perpetrators and bringing them to justice, we must build trust and confidence in the police amongst women and girls. I continue to support the MPS to reform their culture and tackling misogyny amongst any of its officers. I'm unwavering in my commitment to improve the safety of women and girls in this city, and in my belief that changing the attitudes and behaviour of men and boys is crucial.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This summer marked 4 years since the murders of Biba Henry and Nicole Smallman at Fright Country Park by a young person who was radicalised online. Indeed, you joined me at a vigil at the one-year anniversary of the death and met the mother, Mina, at the park as well. Since their deaths, over 300 women in the UK have been killed by men. How are you continuing to protect women in London from all forms of misogynistic violence?
Well, I mean, he'll remember, as I do vividly, that's the first time I met Mina Smallman, the mum, who deserves huge praise. I've since met her many times, and I call her a friend, and she's an inspiration in relation to the work she's doing. And indeed, many bereaved families do a huge amount of work to address this issue. So look, I'm really pleased in his question you mentioned, alluded to the incel ideology of the man responsible for the murder of these two lovely women. So we're doing a huge amount in City Hall to get at the core of the ideology that needs to be addressed by the prevention work I talked about in schools, which is really important. The investment in relation to not just tackling at an early age to address the issue of prevention, but also we've got to talk about the perpetrators. We've got to avoid, any hint of victim blaming. So we are supporting projects to tackle the behaviour of perpetrators. A lot of them are repeat offenders. We've funded GPS tagging for those released from prison. We've also done audits to make sure places are safe, whether it's nightclubs, venues and so forth, and train staff in relation to those issues as well. We're working with the tech industry, working with the Met Police Service and other partners, and I think the work of the Independent Victims Commissioner has been fantastic in relation to Claire Waxman raising these issues, taking these issues forward as well. Already, I've seen progress from Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, in relation to this area, and you'll see announced over the next few weeks and months more policies from the government to address this issue, which we'll be supporting.
Thank you. And I'm glad with your answer to Assemblymember Desai on reviewing and looking at the Online Safety Act and hoping to see what more can be done on its enaction, but also commenting on Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, and she has previously said that the last government's counter-extremism strategy was 9 years out of date, which is criminal given all the high-profile incidents that we've had over the last few years. How are you working with the government to support them in updating their strategy?
In my substantive answer, I mentioned the overlap between incel ideology, and not just the terrorism perpetrated by them directly, but the overlap between that and other forms of extremism as well. There's lots of research being done in this area in relation to, if you did a Venn diagram, the links there are. And so actually, tackling violence against women and girls doesn't just make sure that girls and women are safer, but all of us are safer as a consequence of this as well. It's really important, and it makes our society better as well. So we'll be working closely with the government in relation to its review of the counter-terrorism strategy. There's also a huge amount of work to be done in relation to the prevent side of the work. I mentioned the Shared Endeavour Fund in relation to an answer to the question. We've got to do a lot more in relation to the new generation. I'm really concerned about what boys in particular see in their phones and the algorithms which amplify one-side version of events in relation to misogynistic attitudes. No balance. That affects their relationship with girls, that affects the way they treat girls, affects the lack of respect towards girls, which goes into them being adults and stuff as well. And so it's really important we address that at core, but at the same time have tough enforcement. I mentioned in answer to previous question, the government's rolling out VAW 100 in London. That was the Commissioner's idea across the country to target the most dangerous people, like we do in terrorism, to make sure women and girls are made safer by taking those people off our streets.
Okay, we now move to a new question on unpaid ULEZ fines. Assembly Member Garrett.
Thank you for your question. The London-wide ULEZ expansion is working even better than expected, with pollutant emissions lower than projected compared to a scenario without the zone, and London's air quality improving at a faster rate than the rest of England average. Currently, over 96% of vehicles seen driving in London are compliant with the ULEZ standards, meaning the vast majority of drivers don't need to pay the charge. The majority of those using non-compliant vehicles pay the required daily charge, so only 0.27% of total drivers receive a penalty charge notice PCN. On receipt of a PCN, the registered keeper of the vehicle has 28 days to pay it or to make a representation challenging the penalty. The penalty is put on hold if a representation is received, while a decision is taken on whether to accept or reject it. If the representation is accepted, the PCN is cancelled. If the representation is rejected, there is a further opportunity to pay the PCN or to make an appeal to the independent adjudicator at London tribunals. As of last week, the total value of unpaid ULEZ PCN since the expansion was £376 million. It's not unusual for a payment of a PCN issued for any reason to be received many weeks after it's been issued. If a PCN is challenged, this process can take several months to resolve, meaning it can be some time before an accurate figure of PCNs paid can be recorded. More of these PCNs will be paid over time as the appeals procedure concludes and payments are made. TfL is not unique in experiencing these challenges and is working with agencies like National Highways and local authorities to share best practice. But it's important that TfL clamps down on this issue. TfL has been working to identify new ways of recovering debt, including collaborating with the DFT and the DVLA, working with enforcement agents to identify drivers who receive multiple PCNs and improving communications with drivers. TfL is also increasing the pursuit of civil recovery through the use of county court judgments and other methods, and will not stop until all avenues are exhausted and every penny it can recover is received. TfL is encouraging all drivers to sign up to AutoPay, which removes manual payments and provides protection against PCNs now with no annual admin fee.
That's quite an alarming answer, actually. The figures you've just read out are even worse than the ones that I'd found for myself. So, I mean, I've repeatedly warned you, as you will remember, over several years about the problem of people on low wages with old cars in outer London who need their car and who can't afford to replace it or pay the ULEZ charge. And in May, the Standard reported that there were £220 million of outstanding fines, and you've just told us it's now, between then and now, it's ballooned from 220 million to 376 million. And that Evening Standard report said that actually most of the fines had remained unpaid. We've also seen TfL's bad debt. Before you started expanding ULEZ, it was about 160 million. At the last time that we asked them about it a couple of months ago, it was 450 million. Perhaps that's gone up significantly as well. So it's a huge problem of bad debt that you've created for TfL. I mean, are we going to see bailiffs knocking on people's doors trying to recover this money? Is that where this is going?
Well, as I said, TfL will consider all options to recover monies owed to TfL. There's no evidence that the reason for PCNs being unpaid is because of people's means. TfL is looking into what the issues are. They've also spoken to those responsible for DART payments, national highways, local authorities and others, and the percentage I mentioned, 0.27, is comparable, as indeed is the issues around lag comparable to others as well.
I mean, you keep quoting this very small percentage to suggest that it's not a big number. It's a material number in TfL's budget, isn't it? Hundreds of millions of pounds of additional bad debt compared with before the ULEZ expansion. And it just seems to me either they're going to have to become increasingly aggressive about recovering this money, with bailiffs knocking on people's door, impounding, I don't know, their car, their telly, I don't know what bailiffs impound these days, or they're going to have to write off the debt, aren't they? So this is hundreds of millions of pounds of fiction in TfL's accounts.
Let me be quite clear on a number of issues. There to be no misunderstanding. £367 million of unpaid fines is too big. If you break the law, you break the law. You either believe in that or you don't. So if you're not paying a fine, you're breaking the law, and action should be taken. Just like if you, vandalise a camera.
Before you go into a convoluted analogy,
I was asked a question, Chair, and I should be allowed to answer the question. And so I don't resolve from encouraging TfL to use all options open to make sure we recover as much of this fines as we can.
But this is, I mean, what you've just said is quite similar to what TfL told me at the Budget Committee previously. And, they talk a good game about recovering it. But, even since the spring, it's gone from 220 million to 376 million. It's going in the wrong direction. At some point, do they not have to write this money off? And then, so the impact, so the TfL budget that they present then is a fiction, isn't it? With hundreds of millions of pounds of bad debt that, whatever tough talk you give about people breaking the law, if you can't get the money, you can't get the money. At what point do you think TfL just need to start writing this off?
Well, I'm surprised you're not aware about how bad debt provision works in budgeting. So what happened after a period of time, if fines aren't paid, they become bad debt and they're written off. And it's the same with the congestion charge, which goes back to 2003 in relation to assemblies, embassies not paying that, or in relation to individuals. The difference is there are sanctions available and options open to TfL in relation to individuals. As I said to you, a 5-stage process from somebody receiving a PCN to the end, 6 stages, I beg your pardon, 6 stages. TfL will explore all 6 of those stages.
Yeah, I think what we've learned is that TfL's bad debt is ballooning because of ULEZ, and there is now something close to £500 million of fictional money in the TfL budget, which I think we all need to be very concerned about. Thank you, Chair.
Assembly Member Wilson's question 2590 had been withdrawn and is now down for a written. We're now moving on to Assembly Member Ahmed, free school meals impact.
Thank you for your question. For the first time ever in our city's history, children at state primary schools in every borough are enjoying free lunches every school day, helping families struggling with the cost of living crisis and ensuring children don't go hungry. I'm immensely proud that in the first year of the programme we funded more than 43 million free school meals, and we've invested £275 million so far to ensure that primary school children in state schools across the capital receive a free nutritious meal at lunchtime, saving families more than £1,000 per child over the first 2 years of the programme alone. Uptake of meals is now on average above 85%, and hundreds of thousands of London's primary school children are benefiting every day. We know there are many tangible benefits for children and their families. In London, we've seen that providing all children with free school meals improves financial and psychological security for parents, improves nutrition and school engagement, reduces stigma, improves relationships between families and schools, changes eating habits, and helps create a richer school life. Parents have also reported reduced anxiety about food costs and a feeling of reassurance that their child is eating healthily. Children welcome a hot lunch and being able to sit with their peers. They've reported experiencing better concentration, feeling fuller and enjoying tasty, nutritious food thanks to our free school meals programme. In a survey conducted by the National Education Union, 78% of London families reported their budgets easing somewhat or significantly due to our free school meals policy this year, and 54% of London's parents said it has improved the variety of their children's diet. Qualitative research conducted each term with parents, pupils, head teachers and senior leaders is currently being analysed. Evaluation findings from partners in relation to educational attainment, attendance and other longer-term benefits will be published in due course. For as long as I'm Mayor, working with partners, I'll continue to ensure that all children in London state primary schools continue to receive the benefits of these meals.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and it was great to see you in Lambeth last week with celebrity chef Tom Kerridge talking to children about what having universal free schools has meant to them. Mr Mayor, the new government has a policy of establishing breakfast clubs in every primary school in the country. Your groundbreaking initiative on universal free school meals has meant that there's been a lot of learning and experience from establishing that actual policy. I wonder, what has the introduction of that policy meant in terms of your being able to advise government, and what have you been able to tell them about it?
Well, it's great seeing you at Henry Fawcett Primary School last week at Lambeth, and can I again, as I did then, thank you for your lobbying on this issue some years ago, which is really important in the report you did. So if you think about the potential here, there's a potential with the government's introduction of nutritious breakfast, of us knowing with certainty in London at least, our children having at least 2 nutritious meals a day. Just think about that, how transformative that could be. So we've already begun conversation with the DfE about learning some of the lessons of London. In fact, some of my team were with the DfE last week discussing this very issue. I know the government's committed to supporting families across the country, and their task force will be looking at some of these issues. And the big prize, in addition to the issues we've talked about, is the impact on productivity of our children, which is just so important.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, sadly, one of the worst legacies of the previous government was the cost of living crisis, which the present government has sadly inherited. Oh, sorry, is that not true? Who created the cost of living crisis? What further policies, Mr Mayor, would benefit Londoners who are hit hardest by this appalling cost of living crisis created by the last government?
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing which of the 4 candidates these members are backing. 2 former members are standing to be the next leader of the Conservative Party. God help the Conservative Party. But look, I think it's really important to recognise across our country we've seen a proliferation of food banks over the last 14 years. Food banks used to be the exception in communities, now they're the norm. No contrition, no apology, no humility. Just chuntering in the Assembly. What I hope is that the team now in the Cabinet are responsible in relation to understanding that our families' fortunes are determined by the government's policies and the economy. And it's really important that the task force that I referred to looks into all these issues, the causes, and also how we address those issues as well. And I'll be doing whatever I can to support the government in relation to our experience in London, not just the consequences of our Conservative government, but how we can make a difference with our values.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Chair.
At this point, I think we should have just a pause in our proceedings. That means that we should adjourn until 11:40. Yeah, sorry, 11:40. Yeah, okay, so let's adjourn. So I'll say the formal words. I'd like to propose the Assembly now adjourns for 10 minutes to return at a specified time, which I've just given, before continuing the remaining business on the agenda. Are the Assembly members in agreement?
Agreed.
Welcome back. Let's continue with the questioning. We begin with a question on bus franchising system. Assembly Member Baker.
Thank you for your question. Buses are the most commonly used form of public transport in London. They're crucial to achieving our target of 80% of journeys being made on foot, cycle or public transport, and are vital to us becoming a greener city. Sullivan Buses ceased its operations in London on the 2nd of August. This came after months of regular meetings with TfL, in which we were attempting to resolve many long-standing performance issues. The bus franchising system is dependent on strong relationships with operators to ensure the delivery of a high-quality service, and this means that contractual disagreements such as with Sullivan Buses can take time to resolve. However, I want to reassure Londoners that the problems with Sullivan Buses do not reflect a wider systemic issue with bus franchising in London. TfL does everything in its power to foster collaborative relationships with its bus operators and meets with them on a regular basis to discuss performance and ensure high-quality, reliable services are delivered for Londoners. This is reflected in the way TfL and its new operators were able to provide temporary services on all 8 of the affected routes by Monday, the 5th of August, within just 3 days. I'm pleased that a full service is now operating on 6 of the 8 routes, and TfL is working with its new operators to ensure that there are full services on all routes as soon as possible. School routes have also been awarded and are operating full services as children start back to school after the holidays. The London bus network is large and expansive, and the franchising process enables TfL to set high performance thresholds to ensure all operators are able to deliver services of the highest quality. Any changes in contracts must be negotiated and then implemented. This system has enabled us to deliver the highest bus service standards that Londoners have ever experienced. I want to thank the TfL team who work with all the new bus operators at speed to provide improved services on the affected routes, ensuring Londoners can get where they need to go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yes, I'd also like to thank TfL and the operators that stepped into the breach for the quick work they did to make sure that those routes that so many Londoners were relying on were up and running as soon as possible. And I do understand that there are very specific circumstances in this situation. So I don't want to make too many sort of assumptions across the system itself, but it does seem to be that the risks to smaller, including not-for-profit or mutual bus operators, are more in the market in London buses than perhaps we'd like, just by the fact that very few of them operate. Our bus network is dominated by very large transportation companies. I'm wondering whether you think that's ideal, whether you'd like to see it something different, and if there's anything that TfL could do to help smaller operators run certain services.
Yeah, it's a really important issue she raises because what's happened is the bigger companies are better placed to get the franchises, which means the smaller companies haven't got a chance, particularly because the expertise required to bid for a contract, then run it and so forth. It's a similar challenge we had when it came to housing supply and small builders, by the way. Similar issue, and they are, by the way, boys. The big boys get the contracts, the little ones lose out. And so TfL are trying to be innovative in what they do, particularly because we've tried through the London Partnership to use that power of procurement to support small and medium-sized businesses, particularly those that are diverse, female founders and so forth, in all contracts, including this. Can I ask the Ms. Patience, let me go away and speak to TfL about the particular point she raises, because I can't answer the member, and I want to answer the member, what additional stuff we are doing to proactively try and award some contracts to small operators. I take there are downsides to doing so, but actually she's made me think about the responsibility we have to try and think about small companies, SMEs, so forth. Can I take that away as a piece of homework for myself and write to her with a proper answer? And also, if it's not happening, I think we should be being proactive about this.
Yeah, I think that I'd welcome that and welcome a proper answer on that. And certainly the reference to house building, we've been talking and planning about sort of the barriers that small, medium house builders have, and looking about, instead of making it lowering the standards, making sure that they have more support and more resource so they can sort of compete. So, you know, I wonder whether there's something in that. Yeah.
And also, I'll go and think about, Chair, whether we can, also the bid process can be quite a lot of form-fitting, a lot of bureaucracy and stuff. Question, can we support the small companies to bid? So let me take away.
Yeah, and just really briefly, because I'm running out of time, and obviously there are the government is looking at options where transport authorities can run buses directly and bring some bus operations into public ownership. Could this help basically level some playing field and provide different options in terms of the bus market and who's operating buses in London?
There's a number of issues that flow from that. One is, if you think about it, no company would bid for a contract if it wasn't profitable. I mean, they're not a charity. Question, does it make more sense for those profits to be made by TfL if it's running the service itself so it can invest in better services, or through a franchise those profits leave public transport in London? So those are some of the conversations that I think the government's thinking about. But also, you're right, are there gaps we can fill if there was a TfL-owned, publicly owned bus company in relation to this issue? So those are some of the conversations that I know DfT are having. TfL are part of the conversations as well. But there's an opportunity with the bill that the government's announced in relation to buses and bringing them back.
Thank you. Well, look forward to hearing more about that as it progresses.
Let's bring in Assembly Member Georgiou.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Very briefly, because I don't want to get drummed out of my magic circle over here, by actually saying thank you to the Deputy Mayor for Transport for his quick handling of the Sullivan buses issue. I'd say in my own ward of Cockfosters, where I represent as a councillor, the delays from Sullivan's was very well known to TfL prior to them losing that contract. TfL did step in quickly to replace the bus service, which I and my residents are grateful for. But just to relay to you and to Deputy Mayor Transport and TfL, that in future, where there are franchises, where we know there are delays, they just deal with them quicker.
Noted, Chair.
Okay, let's move on then to the next question in the name of Assembly Member Russell on Elfie Street's delivery and progress.
Thank you for your question. The London boroughs control 95% of London's road network and therefore play a crucial role in creating a well-connected, healthy city. Since I've been mayor, I've focused on working in partnership with the boroughs, which has led us to quadrupling London cycle network from 90 kilometres in 2016 to over 390 kilometres now, reducing road danger at 45 junctions so far across London through the Safer Junctions programme, helping to create around 600 school streets and helping to introduce 20 miles per hour speed limits on over half of London streets, of which 264 kilometres are on TfL roads network. TfL and London Council's most recent borough 3-year report, which is from 2019-20 to 21-22, showcases the schemes that boroughs have delivered using funding from TfL. This includes introducing 157 kilometres of new or upgraded cycleway and 74 new pedestrian crossings. In May, TfL published new guidance for boroughs, as well as announcing an additional £80 million for London's boroughs available over the next 3 years to deliver road safety and bus priority improvements on local roads. This is in addition to existing funding for safer corridors and neighbourhoods, bus priority, livable neighbourhoods and borough cycling. Significant progress has also been made in meeting our Vision Zero targets. I'm not complacent. We need to make more progress. But the number of people killed or seriously injured on London's roads in 2023 fell by 6% to the lowest levels on record outside of pandemic years. Any fatality or serious injuries is a tragedy, so TfL continues its work to reduce road danger. In February, TfL published evidence showing the positive impacts of LTNs, including a 50% reduction in road casualties within LTNs with no increase on boundary roads. TfL is committed to decarbonising its operation to support my ambition of a net zero city by 2030. Working with boroughs to increase walking, cycling and use of public transport already helps tackle climate change, and TfL's work to deliver its green infrastructure and biodiversity plan, such as expanding its wildflower verges, will help inspire similar initiatives across London. TfL works closely with London councils as part of its Resilient and Green Working Group to provide borough support and guidance on green infrastructure, biodiversity and climate change adaptation. I have the utmost confidence in TfL and its commitment to working with the London boroughs to make London a safer, greener and healthier city.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And, you know, that is an impressive list of action that has been taken, and it is making a real difference to many, many Londoners' lives and how they get around our city. Now, in February this year, my former Assembly colleague, Sian Berry MP, published this report, Winning Better Borough Transport Plans. And she analysed every London borough's progress. And what she found was that it was a patchy picture of local delivery. Some boroughs are doing really well and other boroughs are not so well. So there were 5 boroughs put forward no new projects for funding for cycleways. That was Lewisham, Brent, Greenwich, Kingston and Croydon. And then 7 boroughs made no new bids for bus priority measures. City of London, Hammersmith and Fulham, Kensington and Chelsea, Croydon, Havering and Merton. And Tower Hamlets Council continues to work against your transport strategy and so is receiving no LIP funding. Now, given the findings of Sian Berry's report that delivery is patchy, what will you do differently to ensure that LIP funding helps all Londoners cross a busy junction, get to a tube station or cycle to the shops in safety in every single borough, not just the ones that are already making good progress?
Yes, I mean, actually, I think that the members articulated one of the biggest challenges we have, which is working with the boroughs in a collegiate way. I think it's important for me to say that I fully support the boroughs being in charge of, what happens in the local community. But the problem is when sometimes, it could be ideological reasons, dogmatic reasons, they are doing things that aren't helping either the community or, learning generally. What role do we have? What powers do we have? It's limited. So the short answer is we just try and persuade them on the reasons why some of the things we want to do are sensible. If for example, they're removing things like Tower Hamlets are doing, then we have the power to stop future LIP money going forward. Our powers are limited. So it really is trying to persuade them. And any help she can give in persuading residents of those respective boroughs to lobby upwards would be appreciated.
You've obviously guessed where my briefing's going. So the thing is, we're not yet getting those results everywhere, and we've got some of these boroughs are really behaving almost as if delivering healthy streets is optional. So Kensington and Chelsea has just half a kilometre of bus priority lanes. They also ripped out a cycleway on High Street, Kensington. Outer London boroughs have just 93 kilometres of bus priority lanes, and that's half when you compare them to inner London. So, Mr. Mayor, are you worried that some of the boroughs are seeing your MTS priorities and targets as being a bit optional?
I am. They also need to understand the importance of these issues. What we don't want is a postcode lottery. If you take a bird's eye view of London, I'm afraid you can see hotspots of good practice and hotspots of bad practice. And so, with the limited powers we have, we're going to carry on trying to engage with these boroughs. There are borough elections in 2026. And I'd encourage all political parties who believe in these progressive policies to think about how we can challenge those councillors that don't.
So, Mr. Mayor, one of Sian's recommendations was that you provide clear dashboards for borough information to help people understand the LIP schemes that are being delivered and the ones already delivered. Now, in your response to her report, you said that there's a website which I've checked, I've had a look at, and it does have loads and loads of data, but it's very difficult to navigate and it's not very friendly for the campaigners and the people who are appreciating the measures that you're taking to make our streets healthier, safer, and more climate resistant. So I'm wondering if you could work with, or TfL rather, could work with the boroughs to put that data into one place and provide it in a more accessible and consistent format so that people can really understand the work that's been going on and the benefits that come from it in terms of health, road danger reduction and climate.
I say that not in a mischievous way, but if the member was to go back over the last X years she's been a member, the amount of time she's asked for more information to be provided by TfL, that's why it's so difficult to see the stuff she wants to see in this particular question, because TfL provides so much data to members at members' request.
I think it needs simplifying, but I'm out of time.
The next question in the name of Assembly Member Bakari, education opportunities for Londoners.
Thank you for your question. Education can be instrumental in lifting people out of poverty, getting people into good work and addressing inequalities. That's why education and skills are central to my ambitions for London. While I have no powers or responsibility for primary, secondary or higher education, my team works with partners to support these areas where possible. Through the powers I do have over Adult Skills Fund for adults over 19 and above, I've introduced changes that have created learning opportunities for more Londoners than ever before, particularly those who face additional barriers in the labour market. That includes supporting Londoners in low-paid work by opening up free courses for those earning below London's living wage, fully funding level 3 and 4 qualifications to support advanced learning, and fully funding people seeking asylum to participate in free learning opportunities. This has had a clear impact. We've seen a 20% increase in overall participation across our skills programmes since PALS were devolved to London. In London, 69% of learners are female and 59% come from Black, Asian or minority ethnic background. In addition to this, our careers programme is working with 700 London secondary and post-16 education institutions to improve the quality of careers education for students. Our Violence Reduction Unit, which works with young Londoners between the ages of 10 and 25, has invested £12 million in education programmes aimed at enhancing belonging, safety and inclusion in schools. This includes mentoring in pupil referral units, PRUs, and alternative provision, embedding children's rights and supporting neurodiversity and mental health needs. In my third term as Mayor, I'm progressing a new London Growth Plan. A key part of this growth plan is growing London's workforce and skills, and vital to this will be building on the partnership model of London's Local Skills Improvement Plan, or LSIP, and boosting collaboration between City Hall, training providers and London's employers. In London, we have a strong record of successfully delivering the adult education budget, and I'll be working closely with the government to improve our offer even further. This comprehensive offer of support demonstrates my dedication to ensuring Londoners can access and succeed in education at any point in life.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The London Liberal Democrats proposed a Erasmus-style exchange scheme for young Londoners to study abroad, and the Labour group actually voted against it twice. And in your recent campaign for re-election, to our surprise, Mr Mayor, you promised a similar scheme. Now, we're quite used to Labour stealing the Liberal Democrat ideas, that's fine, and we were very happy with this announcement, but surely you can't support Keir Starmer's decision to snub the EU's offer for a youth mobility scheme and to rejoining Erasmus.
Crikey, Chair, we took a long time getting there, didn't we? And if I still remember the start of the question. So look, the Erasmus scheme, the Lib Dems proposed the Assembly to the tune of, the member can't answer how much it cost. And that's one of the problems with Lib Dem policies. They, all these policies without costing them and working them through. It's like promising to abolish tuition fees, then trebling them. Or when you get a ministerial,
we're talking about
a ministerial car.
Your promise to the people of London who voted for you on having a scheme similar to Erasmus. Please answer the question. You were very successful in your last election. What progress have you made in your manifesto commitment for an Erasmus-style exchange scheme in London?
Well, I'll be looking forward to, Chair, over the next 4 years delivering on my manifesto as I did the last two. I'm looking forward to working with members of the Assembly towards the schemes announced in my manifesto, and watch this space.
And we were very explicit within our budget amendment that was fully costed. We do really hope that we see some targets and timescales for this scheme. It does seem odd because the new government has said that joining Erasmus is not on the table. The Liberal Democrats have got a very clear plan to rejoin Erasmus and the single market. Are you going to wait around for the UK government to something finally come round, or are you going to try and use your own powers and resources to make sure that we do have young Londoners' lives rebuilt through our relationships with Europe and the rest of the world? Will you be committed to that? That's the promise you made, young Londoners.
So I think the answer to the question is yes, it's in my manifesto, and we'll be announcing policies for the manifesto in due course.
Okay, you have no detail I want to know specifics. Have you got targets? Have you met with higher education institutions to discuss your proposals?
So no, you don't have targets before you announce a policy. So in due course, we'll be announcing policies in this area and other areas in the manifesto. As the member will be aware, manifesto is for a 4-year term. We've had PERDA and pre-election delays because of the general election. And the team will be working on a number of policies in relation to the promises made in the manifesto, which you will deliver during the course of the next 3.5 years.
I'm just disappointed by your lack of detail. This is something that a lot of people were really excited about, including people who usually vote for the Liberal Democrats. And I'm sure that you don't want to be accused of this, but this is just another election gimmick to peel away those pro-European parties and people who vote for the Liberal Democrats to vote for you. And I'm sure they'll be very disappointed.
The Lib Dems are now out of time. That means the next question falls, and we move to question 2743, which I think is rewilding, and it's Assembly Member Mathers.
Thank you for your question. I'm proud to have invested over £2.5 million in the 3 rounds of the Rewild London Fund. The 3rd round of this fund is now in delivery, and I'm very happy with how it's progressing. Since 2021, the fund has supported 62 projects and has delivered more than 400 hectares of habitat improvement in London's sites of importance for nature conservation. These sites are London's core wildlife network, and they're at the heart of our action to rewild the city and recover nature. I was proud to visit Ealing last year and release a family of 5 beavers into the wild at Paradise Fields as part of round 2. The first beavers to be seen in West London for 400 years. Reintroducing beavers helps transform the area into a flourishing wetland, helping combat the impact of the climate crisis and create an improved ecosystem for plant and animal life. In round 3, we're supporting the expansion of the habitat for beavers in Enfield. More significant activities planned over the coming months for the 3rd round projects, but I can already report some highlights. At Bunhill Fields, Islington, local children are adding pollinator-friendly plants and learning about their benefits. Creekside Education Trust in Lewisham is creating space for wildflowers and insect-like dragonflies. At Grove Farm in Ealing, local people are helping restore and track the slow worm, bat and bird populations. Clarion Housing have used a sports day to get young men involved with nature and co-design their nature spaces in Tower Hamlets. Many of these projects have focused on training staff and volunteers. Londoners are learning how to identify and monitor species and undertake specialist habitat management. As well as deploying these skills in projects, this training will provide a legacy that will ensure nature continues to flourish. I'm proud of what we've achieved and have the ambition to achieve more, ensuring nature is available to all Londoners.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So as you said, 11 months ago, you came to Ealing, to Greenford, to Paradise Fields and released beavers. Last month, of course, we saw the first new beavers born in London for over 400 years. As a result of the successful Rewild London Fund that you've talked about and the hard work of Sean McCormack and the Ealing Wildlife Group. We've also seen many positive rewilding schemes across Ealing and Hillingdon, including at Warren Farm in Hanwell. So, as you said, round 3 of the Rewild Fund is now well underway. Given the positive impact on London's wildlife to date, would you like to take the opportunity to log congratulations to both Ealing Wildlife Group, but also to give a commitment to funding a 4th round of Rewild London?
I'm enthusiastic about one part of that question, less so to another part for obvious reasons. Look, can I just say I was blown away by the enthusiasm of the team I met in Ealing, not just the paid staff, but the volunteers. They're inspiring, and their commitment to nature and rewilding it really is inspiring. I left there invigorated, and it was just a great day. And when I saw the news of the new arrivals, it, again, was just joyous. Those are some of the reasons why we were looking into what we can do in relation to round 4. The reason why I can't give him the answer he wanted today is because we've got the normal process of setting budgets in relation to the following years and stuff. But you can take from my enthusiasm about what we've seen in his constituency and across London, my commitment to the area of rewilding. The new Deputy Mayor for Environment is also passionate about rewilding. He did a huge amount of work in Hackney. So you can tell the direction of travel, but what I can't do today is give commitments to round 4 and so forth. We'll be definitely keen to push this agenda forward.
Sure, appreciate that. And as part of that consideration as well, if you come down to Lammas Park in Ealing, you'll see that there's work that's just been completed in terms of a new scrape channel that's going to be introduced there, which will help with the flooding of paths, but also provide a new habitat for wildflowers to grow and for frogs and other wildlife to thrive. So consideration for increasing funding for sustainable drainage systems, known as SUDS, and other similar infrastructure to ensure more vital projects like that can get started and tackle the disruptive, dangerous and expensive problem of surface water flooding.
Yes, really important that we think about not just rewilding, but also resilience and adaptation of our city. You mentioned just one example of SUDS. A simple thing in relation to making sure new drainage is sustainable makes a big difference. But also, he will know the difference beavers make in relation to building dams, which can help. So we are, not just ourselves, I met recently with the new Secretary of State in Environment, Steve Reed, who's a breath of fresh air in relation to this area as well. And so we're hoping to, over the course of the next few weeks and months, have announcements from government which chime with what we're trying to do. So rather than having a government working against us, having a government working with us would be great. And also he'll be aware about the action the government's taken in relation to organisations like Thames Water to make them more responsible. So we need a combination of central government, regional government, local government, but also utility companies and the private sector, as well as community groups, to all work together to address these really important issues.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and look forward to that work continuing.
Okay, let's move on to the next question from Assembly Member Clark on lithium battery regulations.
Thank you very much for this question. Fires from lithium-ion batteries in e-bikes and e-scooters are one of the greatest emerging fire risks in London. On average, there was a fire every 2 days in 2023, and sadly 3 people died as a result. For years, LFB was calling for the previous government to urgently bring forward new measures to improve the safety of products and regulate online marketplaces. Chair, I know Senator Clark has raised her concerns on this matter on many occasions in the past. Only 2 weeks after their election, I was pleased to see the new government respond to these concerns by including a product safety and metrology bill in the King's speech. From the London Fire Brigade's investigations, we know that many lithium battery fires have evolved either second-hand products or faulty, mismatched or unsafe products bought from online marketplaces, including e-bikes, chargers and batteries. A particular concern is conversion kits, where people can modify a push bike with a lithium battery. These batteries are more susceptible to catastrophic failure if incorrect charges are used or if they become damaged. The new government should take account of these findings when designing its regulations, something ignored by the last government. LFB's Charge Safe campaign shares important safety messaging and advice to keep the public safe on safe storage, safe cycle, safe charging, signs of battery failure, and what to do in an emergency. I'm pleased that the government has already adopted some of Charge Safe's communications material nationally. The London Fire Brigade has done great outreach work that could also be replicated nationally, including communicating with food delivery riders via Deliveroo and sharing safety advice with consumers through Amazon. I'll continue to work closely with the LFB, with the member and the government to ensure the new regulations are robust so they can protect Londoners from dangerous products.
Thank you so much for your answer. And absolutely, it's wonderful to see the government working with us on this to bring forward a safer London. But the practices we deploy in London set an example oftentimes for the rest of the country. In London in particular, where we have people in difficult housing situations, oftentimes working in the gig economy with e-bikes or e-scooters. And oftentimes it's an unsafe product that enters homes, putting other lives at risk as well as their own. I was really pleased, as you were, to see that the new government has indicated they're bringing forward legislation, and I'm delighted to hear that you're putting forward suggestions and working with them on that. One thing, though, I mean, this is true of regulation. Regulation is for new products. And while it's very, very welcome that we are going to see some legislation coming forward, there's still thousands of dangerous e-bikes and e-scooters in our city, certainly on our pavements, but in our homes, in the homes of many Londoners. I think the LFB have done brilliant work with the Charge Safe campaign, with the years of asking government for regulation and not receiving any new legislation coming forward. But until that legislation comes forward, and while we still have these dangerous vehicles in homes, What more do you think we can do as an assembly, as people who represent people, either from City Hall or through our boroughs? What more can we do to be sure that people really do know the risks?
I think the members raised a really important issue, which is, look, even with the best regulation in the world, which is some time off, it's going to be forward-looking, not addressing the dangers that currently exist. And that's why information, education, raising awareness is so important. Just think about cumulatively the number of people that follow members of the Assembly, including myself, in relation to people that follow me. And so when I saw the question that you asked me, Mayor's Question Time, I just checked with my team when was the last time I amplified messages around, charge safe. And so I'll make sure that I regularly try and use whatever channels I've got to remind Londoners about these issues, because we forget, right? And also we don't realise in our homes, it's saying it's very dangerous potentially. And so I encourage everyone, LFB will be doing this, I'll be doing this, I'll be asking colleagues in TfL to be doing this, and I'd encourage members to as well, just to make sure as many people as possible in a non-patronising way are educated about some of the inherent dangers that exist with lithium-ion batteries, e-bikes, e-scooters and so forth in our homes where our loved ones sleep and live.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
If no other members wish to come in, then let's go to the next question on protecting animal rights in GLA-funded activities in the name of Assembly Member Polanski.
Thank you for your question. While I have limited powers over animal rights and animal welfare as an animal lover, I'll always do what I can to ensure GLA policies don't harm our natural world and where possible that they increase biodiversity. I want London to be a home to more animals and wildlife. I've invested over £30 million in increasing and enhancing London's green spaces to support thriving populations of species. Over £2.5 million of this has specifically gone towards rewilding, and earlier this year we announced 21 new projects as part of this work. On top of reintroducing beavers to Ealing and the other projects I mentioned earlier, this new funding will support a range of projects across London. The Enfield Beaver Project will be able to upgrade the current beaver habitat at Forty Hill alongside project partner at Capel Manor College, looking to develop the site into a metropolitan site of importance for nature in the longer term. Lambeth Council will be able to upgrade the habitat across Archbishop's Park Waterloo with a focus on frogs and toads. Working with Archbishop's Park Community Trust, they'll create a new marsh garden, new wildflower planting and new habitat for a variety of insects and hibernating reptiles and amphibians. And the Oley River and Marshes Restoration Project, run by the Wildlife Gardeners of Haggerston, will install stepping stone habitat patches to allow field mice, voles and shrews to move more easily across the grassland that separates the Oley River and the Lee Navigation Canal. Alongside rewilding, my new climate inequalities tool will ensure disturbance of species is avoided when designing a new project or updating the existing one. The tool recognises that we need to protect the ecosystems we already have. In addition, the GLA sustainability policy ensures our catering supply chain meets the highest possible animal welfare standards. At a local level, my affordable homes programme schemes are expected to benefit from flexible policies on pet ownership and be managed with a presumption in favour of pet ownership for their residents. We'll continue to do all we can from City Hall to support and protect animals and other wildlife. Ultimately, however, most issues affecting animal rights and welfare are dealt with at a national level, combined with a local response, which would be managed by London's boroughs.
Thank you, and it's great to hear all of this work on rewilding. In fact, I was with the Brent River Park and Sean McCormack earlier this week. Work they're doing is amazing, including the Save the Warren Farm project. So great to hear you saying positive things. Tomorrow, London Fashion Week starts, and that's what I really want to talk about today. Now, they've successfully banned fur, and that's very, very much welcome. What they haven't banned, though, is exotic skins. Now, these are used by the super rich for luxury handbags and bags, and forgive me for being brutal here, but it is brutal. Exotic skins, the problem here is with the animals. Snakes are pinned to trees, alligators are kept in small tanks, and very often these animals are kept alive while the skin is ripped off them. It really is horrific. Would you join me and Animal World Protection in calling for a ban on London Fashion Week and exotic skins and feathers?
Chair, I simply just don't know enough about this, but it is distressing as he's described. Can I suggest that I take this away and speak to the British Fashion Council about these issues and stuff? I don't want to. I'm not suggesting that his question is in any way inaccurate, but can I take this away and speak to them about the issues he's raised?
And speaking to them would be really welcome. If you were happy to write to me as well, just to let me know after that conversation.
Chair, more than happy to.
Thank you so much. The other thing is, so we give, or the GLA gives £600,000 a year, as you said, to the British Fashion Council that funds London Fashion Week. And this is a question really about the procurement policy, because there's good ones around food, to stop modern-day slavery, to protect people's wages, and also around fair trades. Would you consider something similar for animal rights in GLA procurement policy?
Chair, again, it's my fault. I've not got the briefing. If the question had been more direct, I could have got the briefing. So I'm not criticising him or my staff. But can I take? I just haven't got the details about the procurement deal we have with British Fashion Council, London Fashion Week, and so forth. I'm not sure what terms currently exist in there. Can I take this away? Just to reassure him, we're always evolving our procurement and so forth. He'll see the mention in answer to the previous question about modern slavery. That's quite a recent development. And so let me take this away in relation to the question he's raised, what currently takes place, and if there are any omissions in relation to issues that should be addressed.
Really appreciate that, and I realise you can't be on top of everything all the time, so it'd be great to see animal rights given more prominence within things. And my final question with this, actually, is Plant-Based Treaty have had meetings with the New York Mayor, Eric Adams. They've been working quite heavily with them. Would you consider having a meeting with Plant-Based Treaty to discuss what might be possible in London?
Yeah, I mean, if not me, then I'll make sure somebody from my team does meet with them as soon as possible in relation to the issue he's raised.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, let's move on to the next question in the name of Assembly Member Georgiou, and it's the conversations with government.
Thank you for your question. It's literally just over 2 months since the general election, and I've already had more genuine positive engagement and serious discussions with this government than I had under the entirety of the previous government. This has included productive meetings with the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, Deputy Prime Minister and Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government, Angela Rayner, the Chancellor Rachel Reeves and other members of the government and those that work in government. This is a refreshing change from the previous government. A new approach from this government started within days of the election. Only a week after polling day, a new Prime Minister invited UK mayors to Downing Street to discuss plans for our cities and regions, including local growth plans. We now have a huge opportunity to work closely with the new government to build a fairer, safer and greener London and use the power and potential of cities across the UK to deliver national renewal and the change Britain needs. This government gets it. They know London is the key to turbocharging growth across the country. They want to work in partnership with our regions and cities, and they understand that mayors have a vital role to play in boosting economic growth, building more homes and improving local communities. The message is clear. This government will do things differently and will work with London rather than against us. Only last week in Parliament, the Chancellor sent a strong message about the importance of our city. She said that London is integral to the growth mission and that working with the Mayor would deliver economic growth benefits for the capital and for the country. This is in stark contrast to the previous government who used London as a political punching bag. But this new government knows, like we do, that when London succeeds, the country succeeds and vice versa. Change is not going to happen overnight, but the result of the recent general election represents a turning point. I'm not going to provide a running commentary on the government's agenda and our discussions with them, but I will continue to work hand in hand with the new government and make the case for our great city. We're at the beginning of what will be a long and fruitful relationship. Having a government that wants to work with us, not against us, can truly be a game changer in delivering the inclusive growth and investment our communities deserve.
Thank you for that response, Mr. Mayor. And I'm glad you mentioned the prisoner's Prime Minister, because I'll be coming to him in a moment. Mr. Mayor, you talked a fantastic game before your election in 2024, making promises left, right and centre about what you would achieve with a Labour government. But from what you are telling us today, it sounds like those conversations have not been as fruitful as you would like. The Prime Minister today has said there will be no extra money for the NHS. Winter fuel payments have been cut, a policy which you opposed up until you had a Labour government. As the Liberal Democrats have pointed out, the two-child policy benefit cap is staying, despite what you have lobbied for. You pledged rent controls. The government has now said they have no plans whatsoever to give you those powers. You pledged 1,300 new officers with the help of a Labour government. We still have no details. You wanted control of rail routes outside of London. Ruled out. You demanded £500 million to plug your TfL black hole. Awkwardly dodged by the DfT. You begged for billions for more funding for housing despite missing targets. The Deputy Prime Minister herself has now slammed you for not delivering. Very embarrassing, Mr. Mayor. Have you fallen out of favour with your party and your government?
Crikey, we got there at the end. It must have sounded so much better in his head when he was practicing in front of the mirror this morning, reading out that speech and question. Let me do. He's even learned how to be rude just in a couple of months. Let's Let me go through some of the things achieved in just 9 weeks with this new government, by us working with this new government. So we have a renters' rights bill that we lobbied for with this new government, as well as abolishing Section 21. The bill will strengthen tenants' rights and protections and apply a decent home standard to the private rented sector, and also apply Awab's law. Let me talk about the English devolution bill, which we lobbied for, announced in the first King's speech. The bill will transfer power away from Whitehall and give new powers to metro mayors and combined authorities just in week 9. Just in week 9, we have a bill that's gone through the House of Commons, now in the Lords, bringing in Great British Rail. Ed Miliband's announced Great British Energy. It's in the King's speech. It will mean that Londoners can benefit from renewable energy, something I've been passionate about for the last 8 years, opposed by his previous government. Just in 9 weeks, Chair, we've had the King's speech announcing a planning and infrastructure bill, something that I've been lobbying for. And this bill will seek to overturn a number of provisions in the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act, which I opposed, including the removal of the infrastructure levy, which I opposed, and it will speed up and streamline the planning process, something I've lobbied for as well. The Crime and Policing Bill, Chair, you'll be aware of the lobbying I did from successive Home Secretaries, beginning with one called Theresa May, up until the most recent one before the general election. Well, this new bill announced by this government that we're influencing is going to give greater powers for police, tougher penalties for shoplifting, basically made legal by the previous government, criminalising taking and sending intimate messages without consent, and introducing respect orders to penalise adults for persistent antisocial behaviour. And this week, Chair, you saw the Prime Minister with a meeting where he will finally get rid of these zombie knives that were promised by previous Prime Ministers and Home Secretaries, never delivered. And that's before I've come to the Victims' Courts and Public Protection Bill. I was really pleased to appoint the first ever London Victims Commissioner. The government's taken forward some of the lessons we have from London, requiring offenders to attend their sentencing hearings. We remember the awful case where Zara
Mr. Chairman, he's going on about everything other than what I asked about.
Chair, Chair, in the speech the member read out, he was saying, where are the fruits of this partnership that I talked about? I've got a whole list. Now, if he doesn't like examples of the partnership, that's a different issue. But I've still got 3 pages of examples of the difference 9 weeks of a Labour government working with a Labour mayor has made. I'm happy to write to him to give him examples of this partnership working.
Mr. Chairman, he's more than welcome to write for me. The reality is they don't like him. They love Andy Burnham, but they don't like him because he's a liability. And quite frankly, he's become irrelevant within the Labour Party. So he can drone on all he wants with his pre-scripted answers, but there's no point in wasting our time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
There's a lesson there, son.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, thank you, Chair. Mr. Mayor, the last Labour government left office trying to close our hospital in Whipps Cross, and one of the first actions of this Labour government was to take the diggers and workmen off the ground in the construction of our new hospital in Whipps Cross. Now, in 2022, you acknowledged the issues at Whipps Cross, the issues with flooding and the fact we are in dire need of a new hospital. And you agreed then that you would write to the Prime Minister, as well as the representations you had already made to the Health Secretary. Will you again make those representations for the much-needed hospital that we need at Whipps Cross, which is being agreed on a cross-party basis and continues to be lobbied for?
Well, Chair, the member referred to the previous government, so it's relevant to my answer. The previous government promised 40 new hospitals. 40! Not 5, not 10, not 20, 40. How many of those new hospitals have been delivered, including Whipps Cross? Whipps Cross, by the way, was promised by the previous government. Now, what we've seen today, by contrast, is a sober assessment by Lord Aradazi of the state of the National Health Service, and it's broken. It's broken because of the mess made over the last 14 years, and there's 3 big reasons Lord Darzi sets out for the reasons why the NHS is broken. Firstly, austerity from the previous government starting in 2010. Secondly, the Lansley reforms, the top-down restructuring of the NHS. And thirdly, COVID and the legacy of COVID. So what you've seen today is our Prime Minister setting out a roadmap over the next 10 years of how we fix the National Health Service on its knees, on life support, and we're going to make sure over the next few years, as long as I'm mayor, I work with the government to try and restore the NHS, including improving services at Whips Cross Hospital, which have been awful over the last few years and needs to be restored.
Thank you. To reiterate, the last Labour government tried to close Whips Cross. There were diggers on the ground that this Labour government are removing as we rebuild that new hospital. You agreed to make representations and ask that that work be significantly sped up, and we agreed to those as well locally. I was happy to hold the Conservative government to account. Will you hold the Labour government to account?
Well, I would suggest the member reads the Darcy report today. I've read it, and it's shocking.
Let me talk to you, Mr Mayor. You can make excuses, but when you look at what the Conservatives were left with in 2010, we had unemployment at 8%. We left you with 4.4%. You had inflation at 3.4%. We left it at 2%. You had the lowest growth of any nation in the G7. We left this Labour government with the fastest growth. You had a deficit in this country of 10.3%, and we left it at 4.4%. It is sorry excuses. Either you want the new hospital at Whips Cross and you will lobby for that regardless of the government, or you won't.
Well, Chair, it's relevant to the answer because the members referred to the last government. When the Labour Party stopped being the government in 2010, with the highest satisfaction from citizens of the NHS in recorded history, with the shortest waiting list in NHS history, we had more
Chair,
doctors.
the question is whether he will write to the government. If he doesn't want to answer it, I don't want to hear it.
The members referred to the last Labour government and given a caricature that's untrue. And so it's really important that those watching this are reminded about the legacy we left this government, and today's report from Darcy sets out in black and white the mess the Labour government's got to clean up.
At this point, I need to ask the Assembly to agree to suspend Standing Orders 2.9b in order to to allow the remaining business on the agenda to be completed. Agreed? Thank you very much. Now, can we go on to Assembly Member Lord Bailey?
Thank you, Chair. Hello again, Mr Mayor. In a recent article from the Ministry of Housing and Communities and Local Government, your government, the new government, stated that the government is clear that the recent housing delivery in London has fallen well short of what is needed. You have spoken to us at length about your great relationship with the government. You've boasted that you spoke to Sue Gray 4 times in one day. So my question to you is, what additional help have they offered you to speed up your house building in London?
There's been a number of steps already announced. So there's the renters' rights bill that I talked about yesterday, really important. One of the reasons for the housing crisis is the ability of landlords to evict without fault. That compounds the housing crisis he's aware of. He will have seen today councils saying every day they're spending £3 million in temporary accommodation. So the renters' rights bill, once it becomes an act of parliament, will really help us in relation to some of the causes and in relation to people becoming rough sleepers, but also
Sorry, Mayor, to cut across you. I've asked you a question about helping you build more homes.
Yeah.
What have they offered you? Again, you've had many a conversation, because you tell us that you've had many a conversation. What additional help? They've criticised you and said that you haven't built enough. Fine, that's their opinion on it. I'm asking you what help they've offered you. It's all very well them criticising you. What help have they offered you?
I'll give you one example which led to members of this side being very unhappy. Simple thing, giving the green light to new homes at Cockfosters Station, opposed by this side, opposed by the previous Conservative government. Overnight, permit green light for new homes in Cockfosters. I'll give another example in relation to the government helping us by announcements on the grey belt. Big issues in relation to things like car washes and car parks that are technically green belt, and so issues around there. This government is saying we're going to ensure it's easier for homes to build on there. Another example of tangible help given by this government to us. I'll give them another example in relation to help given to us. Relaxing rules in relation to right to buy receipts, grant money given to councils, means we can work closely with councils into building new homes. I'll give them another example of help this government has given us in relation to building new homes. The conversations they've had with developers. It's really important because developers need confidence when it comes to building new homes. I'll give them another example of help they've given us in relation to building new homes. The biggest thing developers ask for is certainty. And Rachel Reeves and Angela Rayner are giving developers that we work with certainty, which is incredibly important as well. I'll give them another example.
Sorry, can I?
I'm sorry, Chair. He's asked for some
Mayor, please don't treat. I'm not.
He's cut me off.
Mayor, I'm not having a childish conversation. We're not having to and fro. I'm literally asking you for real stuff. I didn't say what you said was ridiculous. I just want to focus, because what I want to get to, because ultimately, Mayor, what would really help you out is extra money. You spent years asking the Conservative government for what amounted to almost £49 billion. Have they offered you any extra money? You seem to reduce your ask to £2 billion. I just like to know how advanced you are with getting some extra money from your government for Londoners.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm happy to set out the timelines to Lord Bailey in relation to extra money. So, the Chancellor's announced a fiscal event in October, the budget. There will be a one-year spending announcement in relation to the next year. The next spring will be a 3-year spending review, and so the government at those two stages will set out.
Do you feel you'll be getting any extra money out of those two events?
Well,
just in your opinion, do you think you'll be getting any extra money out of those events? I know the timetable. Thank you for that. My whole thing here, Londoners listening will be like, is the Mayor going to get extra money? Yes or no?
Well, with respect, you didn't know the timetable because you asked me what extra money.
I know now. I said you've told me that.
Okay,
I know now. Now, will you be getting any extra money?
Your pleasure. Your pleasure.
Okay. Chair, I'm going to stop there because the Mayor doesn't want to answer extra money or not. I'm going to stop there.
Member Mahima.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to, on the spirit of conversations and what this new Labour government that we've on this side have been so desperate for, what they have given us in a couple of short months, they have achieved something that various iterations of the previous Conservative government couldn't do, and that was the Renters Reform Bill. And I just wanted to challenge some of the assumptions and the assertions made. I really welcome, and I know that Londoners really welcome, the fact that there'll be once per year increases to rents rather than landlords being able to increase rents however often they wanted to. And we'll bring an end to bidding wars. We've got people that are going in, pitching for homes, and I just wanted to hear from you. You've made that commitment, a similar commitment in your manifesto. What next for London and the private rented sector, which drives homelessness, after all, in its current state?
I mean, I did have more examples of help the government's given us, but I was cut short by Lord Bailey. By Lord Bailey. And so it makes a big difference. And the key thing, though, is that actually the previous government did announce a bill, but because of their backbenchers being opposed to it, they couldn't deliver. We'll have to wait and see whether this government, who's published a bill, can deliver it. And over the course of the next year, we'll see whether they can deliver this bill turned into an act, or whether they're as weak and useless as the last government. That's the test, really, isn't it? So when we come back here in a year's time, we'll see whether we've made progress in relation to the bill announced by the Labour government, or whether we're waiting 4 years. They announced this 4 years ago. Nothing happened in 4 years. And I'm hopeful this is the start, but we're not going to make progress overnight. It will take some time in relation to the various challenges, the inheritance of the new Labour government.
Assembly Member Polanski.
Thank you, Chair. Mr Mayor, expert after expert says lifting the child benefit cap could take 300,000 children out of poverty. Keir Starmer says there's no money left, but we are making suggestions like a wealth tax, bringing capital gains tax in line with income tax and borrowing. In your conversations with the Prime Minister, for Londoners, are you at least encouraging looking at some of these options?
Yeah, one of the things we'll be doing is speaking to the task force. The Prime Minister has set up to look into the whole issue of child poverty. I've already had conversations with some of the brilliant charities and NGOs who work around this, who are also either on the task force or giving evidence to the task force.
Just because I've only got 10 seconds left, are you concerned about the two-child benefit cap?
A number of issues that I'll be making representations to the government about in relation to welfare benefits, in relation to cost of living crisis, in relation to housing. Some of our policies I've already shared, some of the experience we're sharing with the DfE in relation to universal free school meals. There are lots of other policies as well.
You're now out of time. I thought it was important that we heard that last bit. Okay, let's now move on to the issues of shared ownership. The question is in the name of Assembly Member Small Edwards.
Thank you for your question. Shared ownership continues to provide a path to home ownership for middle-income households in London. As an intermediate tenure, it's designed to offer affordability to households who cannot afford to buy a property on the open market. I remain deeply concerned by the impact of high housing costs on Londoners, which is why I've always prioritised genuinely affordable housing. Using my planning powers, I've continued to maintain that housing costs for shared ownership, including rent, mortgage costs and service charges, should not total more than 40% of a household's income. While rents are regulated, service charges are vulnerable to inflationary pressures, and mortgage costs have been driven up by higher interest rates since Liz Truss's disastrous mini-budget. In response, I've encouraged housing providers to sign up to my service charges charter. This states that affordability should be ensured by prioritising economies of scale and appropriately managing potential cost rises. I've promoted my key information documents for shared owners to ensure they understand the costs associated with shared ownership. In instances where shared ownership home has become unaffordable, my capital funding guide allows registered providers to offer shared owners the possibility of selling some of their shares back to the provider or becoming an intermediate rent tenant. Shared ownership won't be suitable for everyone, so my 2016-23 affordable housing programmes, Affordable Homes Programme, pioneered London Live and Rent, help people save for a deposit. And I'm pleased that the new Deputy Prime Minister has given me the flexibility to fund intermediate rent homes through the current programme, which may provide a more affordable option to middle-income households in some parts of London.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, for that response, and thank you for your comments at the start of the meeting regarding Grenfell. Given shared owners, as you articulated, have to pay mortgage, rent, ground rent and service charges, and given the huge increase in interest rates we saw under the previous government, as many people are coming off fixed-rate mortgages now and remortgaging in the coming months and years, do you fear that shared ownership could become unaffordable for many Londoners, particularly in a constituency like mine where property prices are the highest in the UK?
Well, in a constituency like yours, for many people, because housing is so expensive, shared ownership is often the only way people can fulfil their dream of being a home owner. But the consequences of Liz Truss's budget aren't simply on mortgages and the increases those who are now coming to the end of a fixed term and negotiating a new one, but also things like service charges, ground rent and so forth. And it is a big concern I've got in relation to many of your constituents. And, we're speaking to the government about what more assistance they can give them. These dreams have become nightmares for some of your constituents, and that's why it's really important to consider what assistance we can give to those in need of intermediate housing and those who want to fulfil their aspiration to be homeowners for whom the market value homes are out of reach.
Thank you. And given that response, in your discussions with government, would you consider encouraging a greater focus of affordable housing funding to be targeted towards London Living Rent and social rent rather than shared ownership in the current Affordable Homes Programme and in the next one?
Yeah, it's a really important point you raised, because one of the things that we need is more flexibility, which I mentioned in relation to my answer. So the good news is, in the conversation we've had with the new government, they've agreed to more flexibility, because if we're being prescribed in relation to certain types of home, or if viability means a developer says to us, and they're being genuine, the only way we can make homes that are, in inverted commas, affordable is shared ownership. That's a problem. And so it's really important we make sure there's sufficient finances so homes that are other than shared ownership can be available to Londoners who otherwise would be priced out. It's really important. So when it comes to the next Affordable Homes Programme, that's one of the issues that we'll be making sure we bring to the attention of the civil service who are still there in the CLG that we spoke to last time, but also this time hopefully the politicians will understand why it's really important.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Back to you, Chair.
Okay, now we move to a topical issue of improving safety at Notting Hill Carnival in the name of Assembly Member Prince.
Thank you for your question. It's heartbreaking that Sher Maximin and Musi Mnetu died after being attacked in separate incidents over the bank holiday weekend. My thoughts are with their families and friends at this truly terrible time. This violence is shocking, completely unacceptable, and a betrayal of the values that Notting Hill Carnival was founded to celebrate. Thanks to the efforts of our hard-working police, murder charges have been brought in both cases. I'm committed to working with local partners, emergency services, event organisers, local authority and community partners to ensure the safety of the public at Carnival. As with all major events, we'll be thoroughly reviewing this year's Carnival. The team at City Hall has worked closely with key stakeholders, including the event organisers and the Metropolitan Police Service, to deliver the necessary strategic and operational planning for Carnival. The GLA chaired the Gold Group that oversaw the delivery of this year's Carnival, bringing together the event organisers, the Metropolitan Police Service, Westminster and Kensington and Chelsea councils, and other organisations such as TfL. The GLA is a member of the Strategic Partners Group, which takes a longer-term view of how the event is supported. Public safety is the key purpose of both forums, and the coordination they provide is essential for delivering Carnival. Furthermore, during the event, the GLA's London Resilience Unit coordinated a pan-London response by leading several multi-agency partnership meetings on both a strategic and tactical level. Carnival is a collaborative event, and I'm thankful to partners for their ongoing efforts to improve public safety. As well as the GLA providing £946,000 this year to fund stewarding the event, we contributed to funding the MPS's partnership with Safer Spaces Now within the Carnival footprint. These sites are a supportive space which aim to prevent and reduce incidents of violence against women and girls, providing bystander education and harm reduction information. The usual debrief process is now taking place following the event. This will provide important learning and identify changes to be implemented going forward. I've always been clear that Carnival is a unifying, fun family event, and there is absolutely no place for crime at the celebration. As with other major events, I'll continue to work with local partners and the Met Police Service to ensure the event is safe and enjoyable for all in future years.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And like you, I pass on my thoughts to those the families who lost their loved ones. As you know, Mr. Mayor, my children are of Caribbean extraction. And so I'm a big believer in the Carnival and everything that it represents, actually, and I think it's something that should carry on. But can I ask you, Mr. Mayor, have you or the team looked at alternative locations for the Carnival?
Yes, I mean, another member knows this, but those watching this may not know this, but we don't organise the Carnival. The Carnival is organised by the community, and there's a group that organises the Carnival. And in the past, I know there was I think a 3 or 4 year review that the first Mayor Ken Livingstone undertook. I think between 2000 and 2004, which looked into the issue of Carnival, including location, which looked into those sorts of issues. I'm not aware of the organisers, certainly since I've been Mayor, looking at alternatives to location of the Carnival. I know the previous government wanted the Carnival to be moved. I think the Minister for London, Greg Hands, suggested the Carnival move elsewhere from Notting Hill. I think that was rejected by the Carnival organisers when that was suggested by the previous government.
Mr. Mayor, can I just press you? Do you have a view on it? Obviously, the fact that the GLA provide a significant amount of funding. Do you have a view, which I would have thought would have some influence on the organisers? Do you have a view on its current location and possible alternative locations?
I'm quite clear in relation to every event that we support across our city that the organisers are really important in relation to these conversations. There will be a debrief, and during the debrief there will be proper conversations about one of the big issues that I think I first saw in 2016 when I became Mayor, is the issue of the Carnival being a victim of its success. There are a lot of people who go to a small footprint. So this year we saw some of this relayed by the Assistant Commissioner yesterday. In 2016, when I saw the numbers of people at Carnival, I was concerned. So we asked for a report to be done in relation to crowd dynamics. I'm fully aware from just me being a football fan what happened at Hillsborough in 1989, and the team I support. So it's obviously personal interest to me, and so I asked for this crowd dynamic report to be done because the then Commissioner expressed his concern about the issue of crashing. And this was an issue raised by the Assistant Commissioner yesterday in relation to huge numbers of, I'm paraphrasing, huge numbers of people, small footprint, and potential for catastrophe. I'm also fully cognizant of what happened at the Brixton Academy not too long ago in relation to the awful loss of life. And so those are some of the issues we will be discussing at the debrief, because you've got finite space and you've got more and more people who want to come to Carnival because it's so fantastic. And so can I reassure the member that that's the fore of my mind when it comes to Carnival and safety concerns. We're making sure that the organisers, understand those concerns, and you heard them quite eloquently put by the Assistant Commissioner yesterday.
I'll leave it there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Can I call on Assembly Member Desai?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Mayor, I've attended Carnival with the police since being elected in 2016, every year. I also walk around on my own after I leave the police to make my own observations. There are two sides to this debate. One is the policing of Carnival, the other side is the management of Carnival. The policing operation is excellent. I've got to commend the police on the work that they do, very commendable indeed. And the Command and Control Centre is an impressive operation, to say the least. However, the management leaves a lot to be desired and puts added pressure on the police, from lack of sufficient public toilets to bins to lack of stewards in the required numbers. The Police and Crime Committee did a report which was released in January 2017 titled Nautical Carnival Safer and Better. And our recommendations, I would say, still stand. As you said then, the status quo is not an option. The status quo is not an option. Will you revisit our recommendations and look at ways of using your powers of office to address issues of crowd management and improving the stewarding? And I make this point because, and I've checked on this, we had a holding letter from the then Chief Executive of MOPAC, but then there was no response from MOPAC to our recommendations. It is a fairly detailed report. We took evidence from lots of stakeholders, and I would urge you to revisit our recommendations to making Carnival safer and better, because right now it certainly isn't.
Chair, can I say, I should have said this when Senator Prince asked his question. Genuinely, the way both these contributions have been raised and the spirit and tenor is really important for the organisers to watch and listen to, and not just the transcripts when I send them, but also I'd encourage them to watch the way both of you made the contributions, because you're both pro-Carnival, but you're both concerned about some of the real-life challenges that Carnival poses. And it's really important for the organisers, who a lot of them are volunteers, by the way, community-spirited people, understand with the best of intentions, it can lead to potential catastrophe. And we've seen this year not just the loss of lives because of crime, because criminals go to Carnival who don't understand the spirit of Carnival, but there's actually concerns around not just you mentioned toilets, but also safety. Now we understood in the past some of these challenges, which is why we paid for stewards, because the organisers couldn't afford the stewards. You heard the Assistant Commissioner yesterday giving examples of police officers having to do stewarding roles because of concerns around crowd safety. So, Chair, what I can do is, as part of the debrief, ensure that those who are involved in the debrief see Assembly Member Prince's contribution, Assembly Member Desai's contribution, the points they raise, and also ask for them to be addressed when it comes to the debrief as well, if that's acceptable to both members.
A good outcome in terms of that conversation, because Carnival is important to London's economy as well as its communities, but more importantly, it needs to be done safely.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. I think now, looking at the clock, we move to the next question, which is in the name of Assembly Member Cooper.
Thank you for your question. HIV stigma based on outdated ideas and worsened by discrimination based on gender, sexuality or race is unacceptable. I'm committed to leading the fight against this injustice so every person in our city can live with dignity and respect. I'm also committed to working towards our ambition of ending new HIV transmission by 2030. Fighting HIV stigma is the cornerstone of Fast Track Cities London's FTC work, which is why I was pleased to sign London Up to the initiative in 2018. Since joining Fast Track Cities has worked with over 100 grassroots organisations in London to tackle HIV stigma. This includes co-producing more effective models of care with people living with HIV and granting £325,000 to projects that address self-stigma with an emphasis on serving London's diverse communities. Last December, I proudly signed City Hall up as a founding member of the HIV Confident Charter, which stands as a vital commitment to ensuring we're doing our part in London to tackle stigma and discrimination in the workplace. The HIV Ambassador Project empowers people living with HIV to share their personal stories to help educate professionals in health, social care and beyond. In its first 18 months, the programme trained 27 HIV ambassadors who went on to deliver educational sessions to 2,500 healthcare and public sector staff. Last World AIDS Day, I committed £133,000 funding from the Commission for Diversity in the Public Realm towards an AIDS memorial in London. The memorial will be a symbol of solidarity with those whose lives have been most affected by HIV and AIDS, and a powerful reminder that we must continue to battle against the virus and the stigma that too frequently comes with it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for your answer there. We passed a resolution in the Assembly calling for advertising on TfL estate to help direct people towards HIV testing. And obviously one of the issues with trying to eradicate HIV infections is for people to know when they are already infected, because they may have a very low viral load. Is that something you're willing to reconsider?
I'm happy to take that away, and also see if we can be a bit more sophisticated in relation to targeting. Because we've got some quite useful data about the communities that we're particularly worried about and concerned about. So can I take that away in relation to what we can do? So for example, it may be some stations, for argument's sake, rather than others and stuff. So let me take that away and see what we can do in relation to the genesis of the point is how we can make people more aware about these issues. So I'm happy to look into that.
Yes, particularly given that the communities affected, I think, has changed quite substantially over time. I'm a trustee of Wandsworth Oasis and have been for the last 6 years. And originally, when the charity was first set up, it was supplementing money in the health system for people who were effectively very ill and dying, funding the Mildmay Hospital and things like that. Now we work much more with other organisations helping provide funding where they're doing awareness campaigns, prevention. But of course, we are supplementing minimal public health budgets. And I wondered if you've had any discussions with the new government about whether there will be more money available through the public health budgets for HIV awareness campaigns, because it has been pretty minimal recently.
Well, firstly, can I just say I know Wandsworth Oasis very well. They're fantastic. And so thank you for your volunteering with Wandsworth Oasis. I know this week, for example, 2 members of the Cabinet were at an event organised by Terence Higgins Trust looking at these very issues. So although I've had no direct conversation on this issue, again, Chair, can I take away and see what work the government's doing and how we can, if need be, lobby them to do more if we think they're not doing enough in relation to this particular area that has been raised by the member.
Finally, I wonder if you could just give us an update on progress on the installation of the National AIDS Memorial near the Charing Cross Hospital. Is it the Charing Cross Hospital, I think?
It's in
obviously been a long time coming.
Store Street in Vistoria, Fitzrovia. So yeah, the good news is the project is led by AIDS Memory UK. And on the 12th of June, artist Anya Glaccio was announced as the winner of the commission. And so, I think this is the potential to be, really important for not just the community, the LGBTQI plus community, but also raising awareness of the issues mentioned by the member. Because every time we talk about the memorial, we should be raising issues of testing and all the other issues that the member raised, which is really important.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And just for other Assembly members, if you want to support the work of Oasis, we've now got a shop in Islington and in Lambeth. You'd be very welcome to come and purchase items in the shops. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. We're now going to try in 50 seconds to answer the rerouting of the W12, W14 bus routes. In the name of Assembly Member Prince.
Mr. Mayor, would you just let me make the ask, if you don't mind? Basically, what we have now is a situation where the W14 and 12 has been rerouted. In a nutshell, there are now 6 schools that only receive a 1-hour service. I'm sure you'd appreciate that we need to offer our young people more. So would you agree that I have another meeting with officers and that you support the idea that we give a better service to our young people? There are other issues as well.
Chair, I mean, let me just deal directly with the point, because I've looked into this issue, because the member raised it last time, and he's always very courteous to give me advance notice, which I'm really grateful for, because I can do the research then. My understanding is yesterday meeting, by the way, with TfL, because I think it's really important for TfL to hear from elected members. So that's a yes. But my understanding is that the 3 bus routes form part of a simpler, more frequent and more comprehensive network, and the changes add over 150,000 bus kilometres in outer London as part of our ambition to increase outer London bus coverage. So yesterday meeting, but my understanding is this is more frequent buses on the W12. But let's have the meeting.
Thank you very much to everybody who's helped in making this meeting as simple as possible for me to oversee. So I'm grateful for this.
You weren't that awful, Chair.
Well, it stopped me chuntering and shouting.
Chair,
I've never been so quiet, Mr. Mayor, as you pointed out. I now need to go to the formal business, and thank you, Mayor, for your answers. And then moving to the formalities for the Assembly, can I ask the Assembly to agree the motion which is set out on the agenda in the name of the Chair, which is that the Assembly notes the answers to the questions that have been asked. Thank you very much. Item 5, date of the next meeting. The next scheduled meeting of the London Assembly will be Mayor's Question Time meeting that will take place at 10 a.m. on Thursday, the 10th of October 2024 in the chamber here at City Hall. Item 6, there is no urgent business requiring consideration. I therefore declare this meeting closed.
Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by.